Jacob would leave home as a fugitive, carrying a blessing he had obtained while dressed as someone else. He would return years later with a vast household, a damaged family, a new name, and a permanent wound. And when his life was over, his sons would carry him out of Egypt and bury him in the ancestral tomb in Canaan. Between those two journeys lies the transformation of a man who spent his life reaching for what seemed always to belong to someone else. It began before Jacob was born, in the marriage of his parents. Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. She came from Paddan Aram, the daughter of Bethuel and the sister of Laban. Isaac was Abraham's promised son, the child through whom Abraham's family was to continue. But Isaac and Rebekah had no children. The years passed. Isaac prayed for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord answered him. Rebekah conceived after 20 years of marriage. Her pregnancy immediately carried signs of conflict. The children struggled together within her so violently that she asked why this was happening and went to inquire of the Lord. The answer revealed that the two children in her womb also represented the beginnings of two peoples. 2 nations are in your womb, the Lord told her. 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. The ordinary order of inheritance had been overturned before either child had taken his first breath. One would be born first, but the other had been named as the one who would prevail. When the time came, the first child emerged red and covered with hair like a garment. He was named Esau. His brother followed with his hand gripping Esau's heel, and he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. Even at birth, they appeared locked together in a contest of order and position. Esau entered the world first. Jacob came behind him, holding on. As the boys grew, their differences became unmistakable. Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. Jacob was a quiet man who remained among the tents. Their parents also divided their affection. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed the wild game Esau brought him. Rebekah loved Jacob. The oracle had placed the younger son ahead of the older, but inside the household, Esau still possessed the visible advantage of being firstborn. He also held the affection of the father, whose blessing would determine the family's future. Jacob had Rebekah's favor and the divine declaration spoken before his birth, but neither had yet changed his position in the family. Then, an ordinary meal exposed how differently the brothers valued what stood between them. Jacob was cooking stew when Esau returned from the open country, exhausted. The stew was red, and Esau demanded some of it at once. His urgent request became associated with another name by which he would be known, Edom, connected with the red food he wanted. Jacob did not simply hand him a bowl. "Sell me your birthright now," he said. Esau answered that he was at the point of death and asked what use the birthright was to him. Jacob demanded an oath. Esau swore and sold his birthright to his younger brother. Only then did Jacob give him bread and lentil stew. Esau ate and drank, rose and went away. The entire exchange passed quickly. Hunger was immediate. The birthright concerned a future Esau could not eat. But once he swore, the bargain stood between the brothers. Esau had treated his place as firstborn as something expendable. Jacob had treated it as something worth acquiring, even from a hungry brother. Esau's actions showed contempt for the birthright. Yet the transaction did not settle everything. Isaac remained the father of the household. Esau remained his favored son. And a birthright purchased beside a cooking pot was not the same thing as a father publicly placing his blessing upon the younger child. The blessing itself had roots reaching back through Isaac to Abraham, and its value became clearer when the family's hold on the land was tested. A famine struck Canaan, different from the earlier famine in Abraham's days. Isaac went to Gerar, where Abimelech ruled the Philistines. Egypt offered the kind of refuge people sought during famine, but the Lord appeared to Isaac and commanded him not to go there. He was to remain in the land the Lord designated. The command came with a promise. The Lord would be with Isaac and bless him. Isaac and his descendants would receive these lands. His descendants would become as numerous as the stars, and through them all nations of the earth would be blessed. The oath given to Abraham now governed Isaac's movement. His security would not come from choosing the strongest refuge available. He was to stay where God directed him to stay. So Isaac remained in Gerar. There, another danger emerged. When the local men asked about Rebekah, Isaac called her his sister. He feared that the men would kill him because she was beautiful and they wanted her. His deception repeated a pattern from Abraham's life, and it placed Rebekah inside the danger Isaac was trying to escape. A considerable time passed. Then Abimelech looked down from a window and saw Isaac showing an intimacy toward Rebekah that revealed they were husband and wife. The king summoned him. "She is really your wife," Abimelech said. "Why did you say, 'She is my sister'?" Isaac admitted that he had been afraid he would die because of her. Abimelech understood how easily the deception might have brought guilt upon his people. One of the men could have slept with Rebekah without knowing she was married. The king issued a command to everyone. Anyone who touched Isaac or his wife would be put to death. Isaac's fear had led him to conceal his marriage, but the foreign king's order gave the couple public protection. Isaac remained in the land and planted crops there. In that same year, his harvest returned 100 times what he had sown. The Lord blessed him, and his wealth continued to increase. He acquired flocks, herds, and a large household of servants. His success became too great to ignore. The Philistines envied him. They filled with earth the wells that Abraham's servants had dug during Abraham's lifetime, stopping the water sources connected with Isaac's father. Abimelech finally told Isaac to leave the immediate area. "Move away from us," he said, "for you have become much too powerful for us." Isaac did not challenge the order. He moved from there and camped in the valley of Gerar. But relocation did not end the struggle. Water determined whether his household and animals could remain in a place, and the wells inherited from Abraham had been obstructed. Isaac reopened the wells his father's servants had dug, and he restored the names Abraham had given them. Then Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water. The herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen and claimed the water for themselves. Isaac named the well Esek, meaning contention, because they had contended with him. His servants dug another well, and another dispute followed. Isaac named that one Sitnah, meaning hostility. He moved again. At the next well, no one quarreled with him. Isaac named it Rehoboth, meaning room. "Now the Lord has made room for us," he said, "and we will be fruitful in the land." The movement from one well to another traced the fragile shape of Isaac's inheritance. He possessed divine promises, but he still encountered famine, fear, expulsion, blocked wells, and competing claims. He did not secure his place by defeating everyone who challenged him. He yielded ground, kept digging, and eventually found room where his household could live. From Rehoboth, Isaac went up to Beersheba. The Lord appeared to him that night. "I am the God of your father Abraham," the Lord told him. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for the sake of Abraham, my servant." Isaac built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord. He pitched his tent, and his servants began digging another well. The place joined worship, residence, and the search for water. Isaac had not escaped dependence. He had received reassurance in the middle of it. Then Abimelech came to him from Gerar. The king was accompanied by Ahuzzath, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army. Their arrival was striking because Abimelech had ordered Isaac away. Isaac asked why they had come when they had shown hostility toward him and sent him away. They answered that they had clearly seen that the Lord was with him. They wanted a sworn agreement between them. Isaac was to promise that he would do them no harm, just as they said they had not harmed him. They had sent him away in peace, and now they acknowledged him as one blessed by the Lord. The man expelled for becoming too powerful was now being approached as someone whose favor mattered. Isaac prepared a feast, and they ate and drank. Early the next morning, the men exchanged oaths. Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day, Isaac's servants came with news about the well they had been digging. They had found water. Isaac named the well Sheba, a name associated with the oath made there, and the city became known as Beersheba. Isaac now had room, water, peace with his neighbors, and a renewed promise concerning his descendants. But the future of those descendants remained concentrated inside a divided family. Jacob and Esau grew up under the promises repeated to their father. Isaac had prospered even after being displaced. They belonged to a household whose survival did not depend on an uncontested life. Famine had not cancelled the blessing. Foreign power had not cancelled it. Envy, expulsion, and conflict over wells had not cancelled it. But none of that answered the question created before their birth. The older was to serve the younger, yet Esau was still the older. Jacob had acquired the birthright, yet Isaac still loved Esau. When Esau was 40 years old, he married 2 Hittite women, Judith, the daughter of Beeri, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon. These marriages brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Esau had already surrendered his birthright for a meal. Now he joined himself to women from the people living around the family, and his parents experienced those unions as bitterness. The difference between the brothers was no longer limited to occupation, temperament, or parental preference. It now touched the direction in which the covenant household would continue. By then, Isaac was 100 years old. His twin sons were grown. Esau had wives, Jacob did not. Esau remained the son whose game Isaac loved, while Jacob remained the son Rebekah loved. One brother had been born with the birthright and sold it. The other had purchased it, but still lacked the spoken blessing of his father. And that blessing, unlike a bowl of stew, could not be taken in a simple exchange between brothers. When Isaac had grown old, his eyes became so weak that he could no longer see. He called for Esau, his older son. "My son," he said. Esau answered, "Here I am." Isaac told him that he was old and did not know the day of his death. He wanted Esau to take his hunting equipment, his quiver and bow, and go into the open country. Esau was to hunt game, prepare the food Isaac loved, and bring it to him. After eating, Isaac intended to bless his son before he died. This was the moment toward which the brothers' rivalry had been moving. Esau had sold Jacob the birthright, but Isaac was now preparing to give Esau the paternal blessing. He called for the son he loved, asked for the meal he loved, and connected the blessing with their bond as father and hunter. Rebekah was listening while Isaac spoke to Esau. When Esau left for the open country, Rebekah went to Jacob and repeated what she had heard. She told him that Isaac had sent Esau to hunt and prepare food so that he could eat and bless Esau before the Lord. Then she gave Jacob a command of her own. He was to go to the flock and bring her 2 good young goats. Rebekah would prepare them in the way Isaac liked. Jacob would take the food to his father, and Isaac would eat it and bless Jacob before his death. Jacob immediately saw the physical problem with her plan. Esau's body was covered with hair, while Jacob's skin was smooth. Isaac could not see, but he could still touch. If his father felt him, Jacob would appear to be mocking or deceiving him. Instead of receiving a blessing, he could bring a curse upon himself. Rebekah accepted that danger. "Let your curse be on me, my son," she told him. "Only obey my voice and go, bring them to me." Jacob obeyed. He brought the young goats, and Rebekah prepared the kind of food Isaac loved. Then she took the best clothes belonging to Esau, her older son, which were there in the house, and put them on Jacob. She placed the goatskins over his hands and over the smooth part of his neck. Finally, she gave him the food and bread she had prepared. The disguise was built for the senses Isaac still possessed. Jacob would carry Esau's scent on his clothes. The skins would imitate Esau's hair. The meal would imitate the game Isaac expected. Jacob would also have to imitate his brother with his voice. He entered his father's presence and said, "My father." Isaac answered, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob identified himself as Esau, Isaac's firstborn. He claimed that he had done what Isaac commanded and asked his father to sit up and eat the game so that he could give him the blessing. The answer was direct, but the timing raised another question. Isaac asked how his son had found the game so quickly. Jacob answered by invoking the Lord. "Because the Lord your God granted me success." The deception now reached beyond clothing and prepared food. Jacob used God's name to explain why the hunt he had never undertaken had ended so quickly. Isaac asked him to come near. He wanted to feel his son and determine whether he truly was Esau. Jacob approached, and Isaac touched him. "The voice is Jacob's voice," Isaac said, "but the hands are the hands of Esau." Isaac had recognized the sound of his younger son, but Rebekah's use of the goat skins defeated the test of touch. Jacob's hands felt hairy like Esau's, and Isaac did not recognize him. Still, Isaac asked one more time, "Are you really my son, Esau?" Jacob answered, "I am." Isaac told him to bring the food closer. He ate what Jacob presented as his son's game, and Jacob brought him wine to drink. Then Isaac asked his son to come near and kiss him. Jacob approached and kissed his father. Isaac smelled Esau's clothes. The scent provided the final confirmation his failing eyes could not give. "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed," Isaac said. Then he gave Jacob the blessing intended for Esau. Isaac called for God to give his son the dew of heaven and the richness of the earth, with an abundance of grain and new wine. He spoke of peoples serving him and nations bowing down to him. He placed him over his brothers and declared that his mother's sons would bow before him. Those who cursed him would be cursed, and those who blessed him would be blessed. The blessing gave concrete form to the supremacy announced before the twins were born. It concerned provision, authority, family rank, and the response of nations. Jacob had acquired it by presenting himself as the older brother, and Isaac had spoken it believing Esau knelt before him. The deception succeeded by the narrowest possible margin. Isaac finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence when Esau returned from hunting. Esau prepared the food and brought it to Isaac. He asked his father to sit up, eat his son's game, and bless him. Isaac asked, "Who are you?" "I am your son, your firstborn Esau," he answered. Isaac began trembling violently. He demanded to know who had hunted the game and brought it to him before Esau arrived. Isaac had eaten all of it and had given that man the blessing. Then he added words that closed the path Esau expected to take. "Yes, and he shall be blessed." Isaac understood that he had been deceived, but he did not withdraw what he had spoken. The blessing given to Jacob remained with Jacob. When Esau heard his father's words, he gave a loud and bitter cry. "Bless me, even me also, O my father." Isaac told him that his brother had come deceitfully and taken his blessing. Esau answered by connecting this loss with the earlier bargain over the stew. He pointed to Jacob's name and declared that Jacob had now supplanted him twice. First he had taken Esau's birthright, and now he had taken his blessing. Then Esau asked whether Isaac had reserved any blessing for him. Isaac explained what he had already done. He had made Jacob lord over Esau. He had made Jacob's relatives his servants, and he had sustained him with grain and new wine. Isaac asked what remained that he could do for Esau, but Esau continued pleading. "Have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." Then Esau raised his voice and wept. The son Isaac had meant to honor now stood before him with neither the birthright he had sold nor the blessing his father had intended to give him. Jacob's disguise had redirected the words Isaac had prepared, and those words could not simply be spoken again with the same meaning. Jacob had already been placed above his brother. Isaac finally answered Esau. Esau's dwelling would be away from the richness of the earth and away from the dew of heaven above. He would live by his sword and serve his brother. But when he grew restless, he would break his brother's yoke from his neck. It was not the blessing Esau had expected. It gave him a future of struggle and subordination, though not permanent submission. Jacob would hold the position Isaac had assigned him, but Esau would not remain quietly beneath it forever. Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing their father had given him. He said in his heart that the days of mourning for Isaac were approaching. After that, he would kill his brother Jacob. The blessing that was supposed to establish the family's future now threatened to end one brother's life. Jacob had obtained precedence over Esau, but he could not safely remain beside him. Esau's words were reported to Rebekah. She called Jacob and warned him that his brother was comforting himself with the thought of killing him. Once again, she told Jacob to obey her voice. He was to get up and flee to her brother Laban in Haran. Rebekah told him to remain there for a few days until Esau's fury subsided. When Esau's anger turned away and he forgot what Jacob had done, she would send word and bring Jacob back. "Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day?" she asked. Her plan had secured Isaac's blessing for Jacob, but it had also made departure necessary. Rebekah now intended separation to preserve both sons from the consequences of Esau's threat. She described the absence as a matter of days and expected to summon Jacob home after the anger passed. But Esau's threat was not the reason Rebekah presented to Isaac. She spoke instead about Esau's Hittite wives. They had already brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah now told Isaac that she was disgusted with her life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob also married a Hittite woman from among the women of the land, she asked what good her life would be. This gave Jacob's departure a purpose that Isaac could openly authorize. He would not be sent away as a son, escaping the brother he had deceived. He would be sent to find a wife from Rebekah's extended family. Isaac summoned Jacob. This time Jacob entered his father's presence without pretending to be Esau. Isaac blessed him and gave him a command. Jacob was not to take a wife from the Canaanite women. He was to travel to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, his mother's father, and take a wife from among the daughters of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Isaac pronounced another blessing over Jacob, now with full knowledge of the son before him. He called upon God Almighty to bless Jacob, make him fruitful, and multiply him until he became a community of peoples. He asked that Jacob and his descendants receive the blessing of Abraham so that they might possess the land where Jacob had lived as a foreigner, the land God had given to Abraham. The earlier blessing had come through disguise. This one did not. Isaac now knowingly connected Jacob with Abraham's blessing, descendants, and possession of the land. He also sent him away from that land to obtain a wife. Jacob left not merely carrying words taken from Esau, but carrying a blessing his father had deliberately placed upon him. Yet possession remained a promise rather than his immediate condition. The son, blessed to inherit the land, had to leave it. The man, blessed to become a community of peoples, had no wife. The brother appointed to rule was departing because Esau intended to kill him. Isaac sent Jacob away, and Jacob departed toward Paddan Aram, toward Laban, the son of Bethuel the Aramean, and brother of Rebekah. Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob, and sent him to Paddan Aram to take a wife. He saw that Isaac had commanded Jacob not to marry a Canaanite woman, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother by leaving. Esau also recognized that the Canaanite women displeased Isaac. In response, he went to the family of Ishmael, Abraham's son. In addition to the wives he already had, Esau married Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael and sister of Nebaioth. He had responded to Isaac's displeasure by taking a wife from Abraham's wider family, but the blessing and commission given to Jacob remained unchanged. Esau retained his household in the region. Jacob moved away from it. So the brother who had reached for the heel purchased the birthright, worn Esau's clothes, covered his skin, lied to his blind father, and received 2 blessings now traveled toward Paddan Aram. Behind him stood the family divided by what he and Rebekah had done. Ahead lay the household of Laban, the relative from whom Isaac expected Jacob to find a wife. Jacob had obtained the future he wanted, but for the first time, obtaining it had cost him his home. He left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When the sun had gone down, Jacob stopped at a certain place for the night. He took one of the stones there, placed it near his head, and lay down. As he slept, he dreamed of a stairway standing on the earth, with its top reaching into heaven. Angels of God were ascending and descending on it. The Lord spoke to Jacob there, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac." The land beneath Jacob's body would be given to him and his descendants. His descendants would become like the dust of the earth, spreading west and east, north and south. All the families of the earth would be blessed through Jacob and his offspring. Then the promise became personal to the traveler himself. The Lord told Jacob that he would be with him, guard him wherever he went, and bring him back to this land. He would not leave Jacob until he had done what he had promised. Jacob had departed because Esau intended to kill him. Isaac had sent him toward relatives in Paddan Aram, and the blessing he carried concerned land from which he was now moving away. But at the first place where he stopped for the night, the promise followed him. His departure would not place him beyond God's presence, and his absence would not cancel his return. Jacob awoke and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." Fear came over him. "How awesome is this place," he said. "This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed near his head and set it upright as a pillar. He poured oil over it and named the place Bethel, the house of God. Before that, the city had been called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow. If God remained with him, guarded him on his journey, gave him food to eat and clothing to wear, and brought him back safely to his father's house, then the Lord would be his God. The stone he had raised would be God's house, and Jacob would give God 1/10 of everything God gave him. The promise Jacob heard was unconditional in its declaration. God would be with him, guard him, and return him. Jacob's vow responded in the form of conditions tied to the needs directly before him: protection, food, clothing, and a peaceful return. He had been blessed with descendants and land, but his present possessions were the clothes he wore and the stone he had raised. From Bethel, Jacob continued toward the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in a field. 3 flocks of sheep were lying near it because the flocks were watered from that well. A large stone covered its opening. When all the flocks had gathered, the shepherds would roll the stone away, water the sheep, and replace it over the mouth of the well. Jacob addressed the shepherds as brothers and asked where they were from. "We are from Haran," they answered. He asked whether they knew Laban, the son of Nahor. They did. Jacob asked whether Laban was well. "He is well," they said, "and here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." The answer joined the destination of Jacob's journey with the woman approaching the well. He had traveled toward Laban's household, and Laban's daughter was coming directly into view. Jacob pointed out that the sun was still high. It was not yet time for the livestock to be gathered for the day, so he told the shepherds to water the sheep and take them back to pasture. They answered that they could not do so until all the flocks had gathered and the stone was rolled from the well. Then they would water the sheep. While Jacob was still speaking with them, Rachel arrived with her father's sheep. She was a shepherdess and had brought the flock herself. When Jacob saw Rachel and the sheep belonging to Laban, his mother's brother, he went to the well. He rolled the stone from its mouth and watered Laban's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, raised his voice and wept. He told her that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son. Rachel ran and told Laban. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him. He embraced him, kissed him, and brought him into his house. Jacob told Laban all that had happened. Laban answered, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." Jacob had reached the household Isaac and Rebekah had chosen for him. He had arrived without presenting himself under another man's name. Rachel knew him as Rebekah's son, and Laban received him as close family. Jacob stayed with Laban for a month. During that time, he worked for him. Then Laban raised the question of wages. "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing?" he asked. "Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Laban had two daughters. Leah was the older and Rachel was the younger. Leah had tender eyes, while Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel. He proposed a clear arrangement to Laban. "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban accepted. He said it was better to give Rachel to Jacob than to another man, and he told Jacob to remain with him. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. Because of his love for her, those years seemed to him like only a few days. The fugitive's stay had become extended service, but the terms appeared settled. Jacob had named the woman, the length of service, and the wage. Laban had agreed. At the end of the 7 years, Jacob went to him and demanded the marriage. "Give me my wife," Jacob said, "for my time is completed." Laban gathered the men of the place and held a feast. But in the evening he took Leah and brought her to Jacob. Jacob went in to her. Laban also gave his servant Zilpah to Leah as her servant. Morning revealed what had happened. It was Leah. Jacob went to Laban and confronted him. "What is this you have done to me?" he demanded. "Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" The man who had approached his blind father as Esau had received a woman presented in place of her younger sister. Jacob had used clothing, touch, food, and darkness of sight to secure a blessing meant for the older son. Laban used the unrecognized older daughter to satisfy an agreement made for the younger. Jacob's question went to the heart of the matter. He had worked for Rachel. Laban had named no change to their terms before giving him Leah. Laban answered by appealing to the order between siblings. "It is not done this way in our place, to give the younger before the firstborn." The distinction Jacob had spent his life overturning now became Laban's defense. Jacob was the younger brother who had acquired the position of the firstborn. In Laban's household, he was told that the younger daughter could not be given before the older. Laban proposed the next arrangement. Jacob was to complete the bridal week with Leah. After that, Laban would give him Rachel as well, in exchange for another 7 years of service. Jacob agreed and completed Leah's week. Then Laban gave him Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave his servant Bilhah to Rachel as her servant. Jacob went into Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He then served Laban for another 7 years. The first agreement had placed 7 years of labor between Jacob and the woman he loved. Laban's substitution added an unwanted marriage, and 7 further years of service. Jacob obtained Rachel, but he did not leave Leah behind when he did. Both sisters now occupied the same household, and the distinction in Jacob's love was open and consequential. Laban had gained 14 years of Jacob's labor. Leah had become Jacob's wife through her father's deception. Rachel had become his wife after the completion of Leah's bridal week. Zilpah belonged to Leah as her servant, and Bilhah belonged to Rachel as hers. Jacob had come to Paddan Aram under a blessing that promised a multitude of descendants. He now had 2 wives, but the marriages had begun with love for one and substitution by the other. Rachel held Jacob's affection. Leah held the place Laban had given her first. And within that unequal household, the promised family was about to begin. The Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb. Rachel remained barren. Leah conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, connecting his name with the Lord, seeing her affliction. "Surely now my husband will love me," she said. Her first response to motherhood looked directly across the household toward Jacob. She had given him his first son, and she expected that the birth would change his love for her. Leah conceived again and gave birth to a second son. "Because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has given me this son also." She named him Simeon, a name connected with hearing. The change she wanted after Reuben's birth had not come. With Simeon, she described herself by the same rejection, while recognizing that the Lord had heard it. Then she conceived a 3rd time and gave birth to another son. "Now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." For that reason he was named Levi, a name connected with attachment. Leah's hope remained fixed on Jacob. 1 son had not brought his love. 2 had not removed her rejection. With 3 sons, she expected a bond that had not yet formed. She conceived again and bore a 4th son. This time her words changed. "This time I will praise the Lord." She named him Judah, a name connected with praise. Then Leah stopped bearing children. 4 sons had been born to the wife Jacob had not chosen. Rachel, the wife he loved, saw that she had given Jacob no children, and she envied her sister. "Give me children," she told Jacob, "or I shall die." Jacob became angry with Rachel. "Am I in the place of God," he asked, "who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Rachel demanded from Jacob what he could not give by his own power. His answer identified God as the one who had withheld children from her. Jacob's love for Rachel had not made her fruitful, just as Leah's fruitfulness had not secured the love she wanted from Jacob. Rachel then placed her servant Bilhah into the struggle. "Here is my servant Bilhah," she said. "Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, and that I too may have children through her." Rachel gave Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Rachel named the child and interpreted his birth as a decision in her favor. "God has judged me," she said. "He has also heard my voice and given me a son."
This is mine.
She named him
I claim
Dan,
it.
connecting his name
It is
with
my
judgment.
child's.
Although Bilhah had given birth, Rachel spoke of the child as the son God had given her. Through her servant, she had entered the competition in which Leah already had 4 sons. Bilhah conceived again and bore
May it be a
Jacob a
blessing.
2nd son.
It will be.
Rachel said,
You
"With
challenge
mighty
me.
wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have
And you
prevailed."
cannot refuse.
She named him Naphtali, connecting the name
You
with
have
her
2
struggle.
tokens.
Rachel's words openly defined the
And 1
relationship
4,
between the sisters
which means
as a
I
contest.
decide.
The births were not simply increasing Jacob's household. Each child altered the standing of the women within it. Leah had borne Jacob's
You
first
challenge
4
me.
sons. Rachel claimed Bilhah's 2 sons
The tokens
as
are
the
mine.
outcome of her own struggle with Leah.
They belong to the
When
lineage.
Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she responded by using the same means Rachel had used. She took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Leah declared, "Good fortune has come." She named him Gad, connecting his name with fortune. Then Zilpah bore Jacob another son. Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." She named him Asher, a name connected with happiness. The family had now grown through 4 women. Leah had 4 sons of her own and 2 through Zilpah. Rachel had 2 through Bilhah. Yet the arrangement had not ended the rivalry. Leah still desired the love Jacob gave Rachel, and Rachel still desired the children Leah had borne. During the wheat harvest, Leah's oldest son Reuben went out into the field. He found mandrakes and brought them to his mother. Rachel saw what Reuben had brought and asked Leah for some of her son's mandrakes. Leah answered by naming the larger grievance between them. "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel possessed Jacob's love, but Leah described her as having taken Jacob himself. Even after bearing 4 sons, Leah regarded her place with him as something Rachel had taken from her. Rachel proposed an exchange. Jacob would sleep with Leah that night in return for Reuben's mandrakes. When Jacob came in from the field that evening, Leah went out to meet him. "You must come in to me," she said, "for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." Jacob slept with Leah that night. The exchange exposed how thoroughly the sisters' rivalry governed access to their husband. Rachel negotiated the night. Leah described Jacob as hired. The payment was the mandrakes found by Leah's son. God listened to Leah, and she conceived. She bore Jacob a 5th son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband." She named the child Issachar, connecting his name with wages or reward. The language of payment now moved from Leah's bargain with Rachel to her understanding of the birth itself. She had hired Jacob with the mandrakes, and she called the son born afterward her wages from God for having given Zilpah to Jacob. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a 6th son. "God has endowed me with a good gift," she said. "Now my husband will honor me, because I have borne him 6 sons." She named him Zebulun, connecting his name with honor or dwelling. Her hope again returned to Jacob's regard. She had now borne him 6 sons herself, more than all the other women combined. She called that fruitfulness a good gift, and expected Jacob to honor her because of it. Afterward, Leah gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. The growth of the household had followed a painful pattern. Leah's rejection led into repeated pregnancies and repeated hopes that Jacob's love would change. Rachel's barrenness led her to envy, confrontation, and the use of Bilhah. Leah answered by giving Zilpah. Even a handful of plants from the field became the price of a night with Jacob, yet the children themselves were real additions to the family promised to Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, and Zebulun had been born. Dinah had been born as well. Each name preserved something spoken at the moment of arrival, affliction seen, rejection heard, attachment desired, praise offered, judgment received, struggle declared, fortune welcomed, happiness claimed, wages granted, and honor expected. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and opened her womb. Rachel conceived and gave birth to a son. "God has taken away my reproach," she said. She named him Joseph and added another request, "May the Lord add to me another son." Joseph's birth ended Rachel's barrenness, but it did not erase the divisions through which the family had grown. Rachel remained the woman Jacob loved more. Leah remained the woman who had borne him 6 sons and a daughter. Bilhah had borne 2 sons claimed by Rachel, and Zilpah had borne 2 claimed by Leah. Jacob now had 11 sons, but he was still living in Laban's household. His wives were Laban's daughters. Their servants had come from Laban. The flocks Jacob tended belonged to Laban, and his years of service had been set by agreements with Laban. With Joseph's birth, the family Jacob had been promised was visibly taking shape. But the question before him had changed. He had come to Paddan Aram to find a wife and had acquired an entire household. Now, that household's future depended on whether Laban would release the man whose labor had made him rich. Jacob went to Laban and asked to be sent away. "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country," he said. "Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, that I may go. You know the service I have given you." His 14 years of labor had fulfilled the agreements through which Leah and Rachel had become his wives. Jacob now wanted to return with them and their children to the land from which he had come. Laban did not immediately grant the request. "If I have found favor in your sight, stay," he said. "I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." Then he told Jacob to name his wages, and he would pay them. Laban's prosperity had become connected with Jacob's presence. Jacob answered by pointing to the condition of Laban's livestock under his care. "You know how I have served you," he said, "and how your livestock have fared with me. You had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. The Lord has blessed you wherever I turned." Then Jacob asked the question that Laban's offer had brought forward: "When shall I provide for my own household also?" Jacob had wives, children, and years of proven labor, but the animals he tended belonged to Laban. If he remained, he wanted a defined way to build property for the household that would eventually leave with him. Laban asked, "What shall I give you?" Jacob answered that Laban did not need to hand him a direct payment. Instead, he proposed an arrangement based on the coloring of the animals born in the flock. Jacob would pass through Laban's flock and separate every speckled or spotted animal, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. Animals with those markings would form his wages. He would continue tending Laban's flock under that condition. The arrangement would also make Jacob's claim visible. If Laban later examined Jacob's wages, the animals themselves would distinguish what belonged to him. Any goat in Jacob's possession that was not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that was not dark, could be treated as stolen. Laban agreed. "Good," he said. "Let it be as you have said." That same day, Laban removed the striped and spotted male goats, all the speckled and spotted female goats, every animal that had white on it, and every dark-colored lamb. He placed them in the care of his sons. Then Laban put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. Jacob remained behind, tending the rest of Laban's flock. The agreement had identified marked animals as Jacob's wages, but the animals already bearing those markings had been removed from the flock Jacob tended. The flock left in Jacob's care supplied the animals from which his future wages would have to emerge. Jacob then acted within the conditions of the arrangement. He took fresh branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees. He peeled white strips in them, exposing the white wood beneath the bark. He placed the peeled branches in the watering troughs where the animals came to drink. The branches stood in front of the flocks, and the animals bred when they came to the water. The flocks bred in front of the branches and produced animals that were striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the young animals. He also directed the faces of the flock toward the striped and dark-colored animals within Laban's flock. He kept his own droves separate and did not put them together with Laban's animals. Jacob also distinguished between the stronger and weaker animals when they bred. Whenever the stronger animals were mating, he placed the peeled branches in the troughs before their eyes. When the weaker animals were mating, he did not place the branches there. The result divided the strength of the flocks. The weaker animals belonged to Laban, while the stronger animals became Jacob's. Jacob's property increased greatly. He acquired large flocks, female and male servants, camels and donkeys. He had entered Laban's house as a relative who worked for the right to marry Rachel. He now stood at the head of a wealthy household with livestock and servants of his own, but his increase changed the atmosphere around him. Jacob heard what Laban's sons were saying. "Jacob has taken all that belonged to our father," they said. "From what belonged to our father, he has gained all this wealth." Their words treated Jacob's prosperity as Laban's loss. The marked animals had become Jacob's under the wage arrangement, but Laban's sons described the increase as property taken from their father. Jacob also saw that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been before. Then the Lord spoke to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you." The command answered the request Jacob had already made. He had asked Laban for permission to return home and had remained under a new wage agreement. Now the Lord directed him to leave. Jacob sent word for Rachel and Leah to come out to the field where his flock was. He did not begin by moving the household. He first brought his wives into the decision and explained what had changed. "I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before," he told them. "But the God of my father has been with me." Rachel and Leah knew the labor Jacob had given Laban. "You know that I have served your father with all my strength," Jacob continued. Then he described the repeated conflict over his wages. "Your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not permit him to harm me." The flock agreement had not ended the struggle over what Jacob was entitled to receive. According to Jacob, Laban repeatedly changed the terms. Each change concerned which markings would count as Jacob's wages. If he said, "The speckled shall be your wages," then all the flock bore speckled. If he said, "The striped shall be your wages," then all the flock bore striped. The result followed the wage designation rather than Laban's attempt to control it. Jacob gave his wives his conclusion plainly. "Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me." Jacob did not describe his wealth as something he had secretly removed from Laban's possession. He described it as wages produced under changing terms, protected by God from Laban's efforts against him. Then he told Rachel and Leah about a dream that had come during the breeding season of the flock. In the dream, Jacob lifted his eyes and saw the male goats mating with the flock. They were striped, speckled, and mottled. The angel of God called his name in the dream, Jacob. Jacob answered, "Here I am." The speaker directed Jacob to look at the animals mating with the flock and their markings. Then came the explanation. God had seen everything Laban was doing to Jacob. The dream connected the growth of the flocks with divine knowledge of the conflict between the two men. Laban had changed Jacob's wages. The animals that matched the new terms had continued to be born. Then the voice identified the place where Jacob's journey had begun. "I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me." The stone Jacob had raised after leaving home now stood behind a command to return. At Bethel, God had promised to guard Jacob wherever he went and bring him back to the land. Jacob had vowed that if God protected him, gave him food and clothing, and returned him safely to his father's house, the Lord would be his God. Now, after wives, children, flocks, servants, and years in Laban's household, God called Jacob back to that vow. "Now arise," the voice told him. "Leave this land and return to the land of your kindred." Jacob had placed the situation before Rachel and Leah in full. Their father's attitude had changed. His sons were accusing Jacob of building wealth from what belonged to Laban. Laban had repeatedly altered Jacob's wages. God had protected Jacob's increase, identified himself as the God of Bethel, and commanded him to leave. Rachel and Leah answered together, "Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house?" Their answer showed that they did not view departure as Jacob taking them away from a secure share in Laban's property. "Are we not regarded by him as foreigners?" they asked. For he has sold us, and he has indeed consumed the money paid for us. Their marriages had been tied to Jacob's 14 years of labor. Rachel and Leah described that labor as the price for which their father had sold them, and they said he had consumed what he received. Then they addressed the wealth Jacob had gained. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. They accepted Jacob's explanation of the flocks, what Laban's sons called wealth taken from their father. Rachel and Leah regarded as property belonging to Jacob's household, to them and to their children. Their answer aligned the wives with their husband rather than with Laban. The family Jacob had gained through service was prepared to leave the man who had benefited from that service. Rachel and Leah ended with a direct instruction. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. Jacob rose and placed his sons and wives on camels. He drove ahead all his livestock and carried all the property he had acquired in Paddan Aram. His destination was Isaac's home in Canaan. Laban had gone to shear his sheep. During his absence, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Jacob did not tell Laban that he intended to flee. He left with everything that belonged to him, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed toward the hill country of Gilead. The departure placed two different secrets inside the moving household. Laban had not been told that Jacob was leaving, and Jacob did not know that Rachel had taken the household gods. One secret would bring pursuit. The other would place Rachel under a sentence Jacob himself would pronounce. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Laban gathered his relatives and pursued Jacob for 7 days. He caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead, where Jacob had pitched his tent. Laban and his relatives also camped in the hill country. Before Laban confronted Jacob, God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad, God warned him. Laban had enough men with him to overtake the traveling household, but the warning placed a restraint on what he was about to do. When he entered Jacob's camp, he came as the father whose daughters had left, the owner who believed his property had been taken, and the employer whose servant had fled. But he also came after being addressed by Jacob's God. Laban began with an accusation. "What have you done?" he demanded. "You have deceived me and carried away my daughters like captives taken by the sword." Rachel and Leah had agreed that Jacob should obey God and leave. They had described themselves as foreigners in their father's house and had said the wealth God took from Laban belonged to them and their children. Laban now described their departure in completely different terms. To him, Jacob had carried them away as captives. "Why did you flee secretly and deceive me?" Laban continued. "Why did you not tell me?" He claimed that if Jacob had told him, he would have sent him away with celebration, with songs, tambourine, and lyre. He accused Jacob of denying him the opportunity to kiss his daughters and grandchildren before they left. "You have acted foolishly," Laban said. Then he made the danger explicit. "It is in my power to do you harm." But Laban immediately named the restraint placed upon that power. "The God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.'" Laban could present Jacob's flight as deception. He could claim the departure should have happened with music and farewells. He could point to the force gathered behind him and say that harm was within his power. Yet before he reached Jacob, the God who had commanded Jacob to leave had warned Laban about the confrontation. Then Laban separated Jacob's departure from another offense. "Now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house," he said. "But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob knew why he had fled. He did not know why Laban's household gods were missing. He answered the first accusation. "I was afraid," Jacob said, "because I thought you would take your daughters from me by force." Jacob had served 14 years for Rachel and Leah. When he spoke with them in the field, both women had agreed to leave. But Jacob expected Laban to resist the departure by taking them away from him. That fear explained why he had left without notice. Then Jacob answered the accusation about the household gods with complete confidence in his own household. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. He invited Laban to search in the presence of their relatives. If Laban recognized anything belonging to him among Jacob's possessions, he could take it. Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. The sentence was now spoken. Laban had permission to search, and the person concealing the missing objects was Jacob's beloved wife. Laban entered Jacob's tent and searched it. He went into Leah's tent and then into the tents of the two female servants. He found nothing. Then he left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Rachel had taken the household gods and placed them inside a camel's saddle. She was sitting on them. Laban searched through the tent, feeling through its contents, but he did not find the objects beneath Rachel. Rachel addressed her father. "Do not be angry, my lord, that I cannot rise before you," she said, "for the way of women is upon me." She remained seated while Laban searched. The household gods were directly beneath her, but Laban did not find them. Rachel's concealment protected her from the sentence Jacob had pronounced without knowing what she had done. Laban's search also gave Jacob what he believed was proof that the accusation was false. From Jacob's position, Laban had pursued him, searched every tent, and failed to produce the stolen property he claimed was there. Jacob's fear turned into anger. He confronted Laban in front of the relatives gathered around them. "What is my offense?" Jacob demanded. "What is my sin that you have pursued me so fiercely?" Then he pointed to the search Laban had just completed. "You have felt through all my possessions. What have you found from all your household goods?" Jacob told Laban to place any recovered object before the relatives from both sides so that they could decide between the two men. Laban had found nothing he could display. The hidden gods remained beneath Rachel, and Jacob now used the failed search as the opening for 20 years of accumulated grievance. "These 20 years I have been with you," Jacob said. He began with the cost of caring for Laban's animals. During Jacob's years with the flock, Laban's ewes and female goats had not miscarried. Jacob had not eaten the rams from Laban's flock. When a wild animal tore one of the livestock, Jacob did not bring the remains to Laban and place the loss upon him. Jacob bore the loss himself. Whether an animal was stolen by day or by night, Laban required compensation from Jacob. Jacob described the physical burden of that service. By day, the heat consumed him. By night, he endured the cold. Sleep fled from his eyes. He had already reminded Rachel and Leah that he served their father with all his strength. Now he said it to Laban's face, before the relatives who had come in pursuit. "I have been in your house 20 years, Jacob continued. 14 of those years had been service for Laban's 2 daughters. 6 had been service for the flock. During those years, Laban had changed his wages 10 times. The confrontation gathered every stage of their relationship into one reckoning. Jacob had arrived as Rebekah's son and had been welcomed as Laban's own flesh and bone. He had agreed to 7 years for Rachel, received Leah instead, completed another agreement, and worked 7 additional years. After asking to return home, he had remained 6 more years, under terms tied to the flock. Now Laban stood inside Jacob's camp accusing him of theft. Jacob declared what would have happened without divine protection. "If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, surely you would have sent me away empty-handed." Jacob had departed from Canaan with the promise that God would be with him and guard him. He now looked back over 20 years and identified that presence as the reason Laban had not stripped him of the household and wealth he had built. "God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands," Jacob said, and he rebuked you last night." The dream Laban had already admitted became Jacob's final evidence. The warning was not a private claim Jacob could not verify. Laban himself had told him that the God of Jacob's father had spoken to him. Laban answered, but he did not refute Jacob's description of the 20 years. Instead, he declared his own claim over everything in front of him. "The daughters are my daughters," he said. "The children are my children. The flocks are my flocks. All that you see is mine." His words treated Jacob's wives, children, and livestock as extensions of Laban's household, even though Jacob had served for the women and acquired the flocks as wages. But Laban also recognized the limit of what he would do at Gilead. "What can I do today to these daughters of mine?" he asked, "or to their children whom they have borne?" Then he proposed a covenant. "Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between us." The conflict would not be resolved by Jacob returning to serve or by Laban reclaiming the moving household. It would end through a sworn boundary between them. Jacob took a stone and set it upright as a pillar. Then he told the relatives to gather stones. They collected them and made a heap, and they ate there beside it. Laban gave the heap an Aramaic name, Jagar Sahadutha. Jacob called it Galid. Both names identified it as a heap of witness. Laban declared, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." For that reason, the place was called Galid. It was also called Mizpah, a watchpost, because Laban said, "May the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight." The appeal was not an expression of easy trust. Jacob had fled because he feared Laban would take Rachel and Leah by force. Laban had pursued because Jacob left secretly and because his household gods were missing. They were making an agreement for the time when neither man could see what the other was doing. Laban placed conditions upon Jacob concerning his daughters. "If you mistreat my daughters," he said, "or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, although no one is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me." Then he pointed to the heap and the pillar. "This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness." The stones marked what neither man was to cross with hostile purpose. Laban swore that he would not pass beyond the heap to harm Jacob, and Jacob was not to pass beyond it to harm Laban. The boundary did not prevent all movement through the region. It stood against movement for harm. Each man was to remain on his side of the covenant rather than pursue the other in violence. Laban called upon the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father to judge between them. Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Their words shared names from the family's past, but Jacob's oath fixed his allegiance to the God associated with Isaac, the God who had promised to remain with him, prospered him in Laban's household, commanded him to return, and restrained Laban during the pursuit. Jacob offered a sacrifice there in the hill country. He called his relatives to eat bread, and they ate and remained there through the night. The shared meal completed the covenant beside the heap of witness. Laban had entered the camp with accusations, the power to harm, and a demand for his missing gods. He would leave without recovering the gods, without taking his daughters, and without reclaiming Jacob's flocks. Early in the morning, Laban rose. He kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. The man who had controlled Jacob's labor changed his wages, substituted one daughter for another, and pursued the fleeing household, now moved back toward Paddan Aram. The heap and pillar stood between them as witnesses against another hostile crossing. Jacob's 20 years under Laban were over, but the covenant at Gilead secured only the road behind him. His course still led toward Canaan, the land he had left because Esau intended to kill him. As Jacob continued on his way, angels of God met him. When he saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." He named the place Mahanaim, a name associated with two camps. Jacob had just left one guarded boundary behind him, and before he faced the brother ahead, he encountered a camp belonging to God. Then Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to Esau. His brother was living in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. Jacob instructed the messengers to address Esau as his lord and identify Jacob as his servant. "I have lived with Laban and remained there until now," they were to say. "I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord, so that I may find favor in your sight." Jacob's message did not speak of the birthright or the blessing. It did not assert the authority Isaac had given him over his brother. Jacob approached Esau as a servant seeking favor from his lord. The messengers returned with a brief report. "We came to your brother Esau. He is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him." Jacob became greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people traveling with him, along with the flocks, herds, and camels, into two camps. If Esau attacked one camp, Jacob reasoned, the other could escape. The brother who once planned to kill him was now approaching with 400 men. Jacob had left Canaan to survive Esau's anger. 20 years had passed in Laban's household, but the message from Esau contained no words of welcome. It announced movement and force. Jacob had arrived in Paddan Aram with only his staff. He was returning with enough people and livestock to form two camps, yet his increase also multiplied what could be lost in an attack. Wives, children, servants, and herds now stood inside the danger created by his return. After dividing the camp, Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good.'" Jacob began with the command that had brought him to this moment. He had not turned toward Canaan without direction. The Lord had told him to return and had promised to be with him. "I am not worthy of the least of all the steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant." Then Jacob measured the change in his life by the river before him. "With only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps." His wealth had become undeniable, but in prayer Jacob described it as the result of divine love and faithfulness. He had not possessed the household when he first crossed eastward. Now he feared that the entire increase might be struck by Esau. "Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau," Jacob said, "for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children." Jacob named both the danger and his fear without disguise. Then he appealed to the promise of descendants that had followed him from Canaan. "You said, 'I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude.'" The threatened household was the household through which that promise was taking visible form. Jacob had 11 sons and a daughter. The possibility of Esau attacking the mothers with their children stood directly against the future God had promised. Jacob remained there that night. From what he had with him, he selected a gift for Esau. The gift was immense: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 nursing camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. Jacob divided the animals into separate herds and placed each herd in the care of servants. He told the servants to cross ahead of him and leave space between one herd and the next. Then he prepared the words each servant was to speak. He instructed the servant leading the first herd that Esau would ask 3 questions. "To whom do you belong? Where are you going? Whose animals are these ahead of you?" The servant was to answer, "They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and Jacob is behind us." Jacob gave the same instruction to the servants leading the second and third herds and to all who followed them. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him, Jacob told them, and you shall say, your servant Jacob is behind us. Jacob explained the purpose of the procession to himself. I may appease him with the gift that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. The herds would reach Esau in stages. Each one would carry the same message of submission. Esau would repeatedly hear himself called Lord, repeatedly hear Jacob called servant, and repeatedly receive another portion of Jacob's wealth before the brothers met face to face. Jacob was sending property ahead to address a conflict rooted in what he had taken. He had acquired Esau's birthright for bread and lentil stew. He had received Isaac's blessing while wearing Esau's clothes. Now goats, sheep, camels, cattle, and donkeys moved between the brothers as a gift intended to secure acceptance. The present crossed ahead of Jacob while he remained that night in the camp. During the night, Jacob rose. He took Leah and Rachel, Bilhah and Zilpah, and his 11 sons, and brought them across the ford of the Jabbok. He sent them across the stream along with everything else he possessed. Jacob was left alone. Then a man wrestled with him until daybreak. The struggle continued through the night. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip. The hip was dislocated while they wrestled. The man said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." Jacob refused. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Years earlier, Jacob had entered his blind father's presence under his brother's name to obtain a blessing. At the Jabbok, stripped of disguise and separated from everything he owned, he held on through injury and asked openly for one. The man asked, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. This time when Jacob gave his name, he gave his own. The man said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." The name Jacob had been connected with grasping the heel and supplanting his brother. The name Israel was connected with striving with God. The change did not erase the years behind him. It named what had happened through them. Jacob had struggled with Esau, with Laban, and now through the night at the Jabbok. He had prevailed, but he did not emerge untouched. The blessing came with his hip out of joint. Jacob then asked the man, "Please tell me your name." The man answered with a question, "Why is it that you ask my name?" Then he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, the face of God. "For I have seen God face to face," he said, "and yet my life has been delivered." The night began with Jacob fearing the face of Esau. Before seeing his brother, he passed through a struggle that he described as seeing the face of God. He entered that struggle as Jacob and left it bearing the name Israel. The sun rose as he passed beyond Peniel. Jacob was limping because of his hip. The wound became a physical mark of the encounter. It also became the reason the people of Israel do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because Jacob had been touched there. Morning did not remove the meeting ahead. Esau was still approaching with 400 men. Jacob's gifts had crossed first, and his family had crossed the Jabbok. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and saw Esau coming. He immediately arranged the children with their mothers. He placed Bilhah and Zilpah with their children in front. Leah and her children followed. Rachel and Joseph came behind them. Then Jacob went ahead of everyone. He bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. The man Isaac had blessed as Lord over his brother now moved toward Esau with repeated gestures of submission. The newly named Israel did not place himself behind the women and children. He passed ahead of them and faced Esau first. Esau ran toward him. He embraced Jacob, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. Then the brothers wept. The violence Jacob feared did not come. The 400 men remained with Esau, but Esau used his arms to embrace the brother he had once intended to kill. Jacob had sent herd after herd in the hope of seeing Esau's face and being accepted. At the meeting itself, Esau closed the distance by running. When Esau looked up, he saw the women and children.
I have returned.
"Who are these with you?" he
By
asked.
God,
Jacob
you are
answered,
safe.
"The children whom God has graciously
waited
given
for
your
so
servant." Bilhah and Zilpah approached with their children and bowed. Leah and her children also came near and bowed. Finally, Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed. Esau then asked about all the animals he had encountered. "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." Esau told him the gift was unnecessary.
Welcome home, my brother.
"I have enough, my brother," he said. "Keep what you have for yourself." The address had changed. Jacob continued calling himself servant and Esau Lord, but Esau called Jacob his brother. Jacob urged him to accept. "No, please," Jacob said. "If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand." Then he connected Esau's reception with the encounter of the previous night. "For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me." At Peniel, Jacob had seen God face to face and survived. Now he looked upon the face he had feared for 20 years and found acceptance. "Please accept my blessing that is brought to you," Jacob continued, "because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Jacob called the gift a blessing. He had once taken a blessing meant for Esau. Now he pressed a blessing into Esau's hands from the abundance God had given him. Esau resisted, but Jacob continued urging him until he accepted. The transfer did not reverse Isaac's words or restore the sold birthright. It did acknowledge what stood between the brothers. Jacob gave freely from the wealth he had gained and asked Esau to receive it as evidence of favor. Esau then proposed that they travel on together. "Let us journey on our way," he said. "I will go ahead of you." Jacob answered by pointing to the condition of the household and livestock. "My Lord knows that the children are frail," he said, "and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die." Jacob asked Esau to pass ahead. He would move slowly, according to the pace of the livestock and the children, until he came to Esau in Seir. Esau offered to leave some of his people with Jacob. Jacob declined. "What need is there?" he asked. "Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." That same day, Esau began his journey back toward Seir. Jacob traveled to Succoth. There he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. The shelters gave the place its name, Succoth. The brothers had met without bloodshed and separated without another dispute. Esau returned toward his established home in Seir. Jacob did not follow him there. He stopped at Succoth and built for his household and animals. From Paddan Aram, Jacob then came safely to the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan. He camped within sight of the city. His return fulfilled the direction given at Bethel and repeated in Paddan Aram. God had guarded him during his absence, brought him out from Laban, restrained the pursuit at Gilead, and delivered him through the meeting with Esau. Jacob purchased the parcel of ground where he pitched his tent. He bought it from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel. At Bethel, Jacob had raised a stone and vowed that if God returned him safely, the Lord would be his God. Near Shechem, he raised an altar under the name he had received at the Jabbok and identified God as the God of Israel. He was back in Canaan. He had land on which to pitch his tent, an altar bearing his new name, and peace with the brother he had feared. But the household gathered near Shechem remained the same household formed through Leah and Rachel's rivalry, enlarged through Bilhah and Zilpah, and led by sons whose relationships had already been shaped by divided love. Jacob's external danger had receded, his family's danger had not. Dinah, the daughter Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. Shechem saw her. He was the son of Hamor the Hivite, the leading man of that region. He took Dinah, lay with her, and violated her. Afterward, Shechem's desire remained fixed on Dinah. He loved her and spoke tenderly to her. Then he told Hamor, "Get me this young woman for my wife." Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter. His sons were in the field with the livestock, so Jacob remained silent until they returned. Hamor came to speak with Jacob. When Jacob's sons heard what had happened, they came in from the field. They were distressed and extremely angry because Shechem had committed an outrageous act against Jacob's family by lying with Jacob's daughter. Hamor appealed to them on behalf of his son. "My son Shechem longs for your daughter," he said. "Please give her to him as his wife." Then Hamor expanded the proposal beyond one marriage. Jacob's family and the people of the city could intermarry. Hamor's sons could take daughters from Jacob's household, and Jacob's sons could take daughters from the city. Jacob's family could live among them, move freely through the land, trade, and acquire property there. The offer would turn the violation into a marriage and join the two communities through their children and possessions. Shechem also spoke directly to Jacob and Dinah's brothers. "Let me find favor in your eyes," he said, "and whatever you say to me I will give." He invited them to set the bride price and gift as high as they wished. Whatever they demanded, he would pay if they would give Dinah to him as his wife. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and Hamor deceitfully because Shechem had defiled their sister. They said they could not give Dinah to a man who was uncircumcised. To do so would be a disgrace to them. They would agree only on one condition. Every male among Hamor's people had to be circumcised as the males in Jacob's household were circumcised. If the men accepted, Jacob's sons said they would give their daughters to them, take their daughters for themselves, live among them, and become one people. But if the men refused circumcision, Jacob's sons would take Dinah and leave. The condition pleased Hamor and Shechem. Shechem did not delay in carrying it out because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was also the most honored man in his father's household. Hamor and Shechem went to the gate of their city and presented the proposal to the men there. "These men are at peace with us," they said. They urged the men to allow Jacob's family to live in the land and trade in it, pointing out that the region had ample room. The people of the city could take Jacob's daughters in marriage and give their own daughters to Jacob's sons. Then Hamor and Shechem explained the condition. The men from Jacob's household would agree to live among them and become one people only if every male in the city was circumcised. To persuade the city, Hamor and Shechem pointed to the wealth that could come within their reach. "Will not their livestock, their property, and all their animals be ours?" they asked. "Only let us agree with them, and they will live among us." The men at the city gate listened to Hamor and Shechem. Every male who went out through the gate of the city was circumcised. The agreement appeared to be moving toward the union Hamor had proposed. The city's men had accepted the physical mark required by Jacob's sons, and Shechem expected to receive Dinah as his wife. But Jacob's sons had never intended the terms as an honest path to peace. On the third day, while the men of the city were still in pain, Dinah's brothers Simeon and Levi took their swords. They entered the unsuspecting city and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword. Then they took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The other sons of Jacob came upon the slain men and plundered the city because their sister had been defiled. They took the city's sheep, cattle, and donkeys, along with what was in the city and what was in the field. They carried away all the wealth, took the women and children captive, and plundered everything in the houses. Shechem's act against Dinah had been followed by negotiations involving marriage, land, commerce, property, and the joining of two peoples. Simeon and Levi turned the demanded circumcision into the means of attack, and the brothers turned the slaughter into the plunder of the entire city. Jacob confronted Simeon and Levi. "You have brought trouble on me," he told them, "by making me repulsive to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites." Jacob's household was small in number compared with the peoples around them. He feared that they would unite against him, attack him, and destroy both him and his household. His sons answered with a question of their own. "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" The exchange ended without agreement. Jacob spoke of the danger their vengeance had created for the whole household. Simeon and Levi answered by returning to the treatment of Dinah. The violence remained inside the family as an act the brothers defended, and their father regarded as bringing ruin to his name and danger to everyone with him. Then God told Jacob to leave the area. "Arise, go up to Bethel and live there," God said. "Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." Shechem had become the place where Jacob's household acquired land and built an altar. But it had also become the place where Dinah was violated and her brothers massacred a city. God now directed Jacob back to the place where he had first received the promise of protection and return. Jacob addressed his household and everyone traveling with him. "Put away the foreign gods that are among you," he commanded. "Purify yourselves and change your garments." Then he told them they were going to Bethel. "There I will make an altar to the God who answered me in the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone." The command reached everything the household carried with it. Rachel had brought Laban's household gods from Paddan Aram and concealed them through the search at Gilead. Now Jacob called for the removal of the foreign gods among the entire company. They gave Jacob all the foreign gods in their possession and the earrings they wore. Jacob buried them under the tree near Shechem. Then the household departed. A terror from God fell upon the cities around them, and the people did not pursue Jacob's sons. The danger Jacob had named after the massacre did not become an attack upon the traveling household. Simeon and Levi had made the family repulsive to the inhabitants of the land. But the surrounding cities did not follow as Jacob moved toward Bethel. Jacob arrived at Luz, which is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. Everyone with him arrived there as well. He built an altar and named the place El Bethel, God of Bethel, because God had revealed himself to Jacob there when he fled from Esau. Jacob had first reached that place carrying a stone, a staff, and the fear of his brother. He returned with wives, children, servants, flocks, and the consequences of a violent household. The God he worshipped there was the one who had answered him in distress and remained with him through every movement since. While they were in that region, Deborah died. She had been Rebekah's nurse. Deborah was buried below Bethel under an oak. The tree was named Allon Bacuth, the oak of weeping. Her presence connected Jacob's returning household with his mother's family. Rebekah had sent Jacob toward Laban and expected to call him back after Esau's anger passed. Deborah, who had served Rebekah, was now buried near the place where Jacob marked his return. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God addressed the two names Jacob carried. "Your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." God had already given him the name Israel after the struggle at the Jabbok. At Bethel, the new name was declared again. Then God identified himself. "I am God Almighty." He commanded Jacob to be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a community of nations would come from him, and kings would come from his own body. The promise extended beyond the size of the household standing at Bethel. Jacob now had many children, but the future spoken over Israel concerned nations and kings. God also repeated the promise concerning the land. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you. Jacob had returned to Canaan, purchased a parcel near Shechem, and escaped retaliation from the cities after his son's violence. Yet his family's possession of the land still rested on God's promise. The land given to Abraham and Isaac was now explicitly given to Jacob and his descendants. Then God went up from the place where he had spoken with him. Jacob set up a stone pillar there. He poured a drink offering over it and poured oil on it. Once again he named the place Bethel. The location now held both ends of his exile. There Jacob had slept while fleeing Canaan. There God had promised to guard him and return him. There Jacob had raised a pillar and made his vow. Now he stood at the same place as Israel, received the promise again, and raised another pillar. Then the household moved on from Bethel. While they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel went into labor. Her labor was severe. As she struggled to give birth, the midwife spoke to her. "Do not be afraid, for you have another son." Rachel had named Joseph with a request that the Lord add another son to her. Now that son was born, but the birth cost Rachel her life. As her life was leaving her, Rachel named the child Ben-Oni, the son of my sorrow. Jacob gave him another name, Benjamin. Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a pillar over her grave. That pillar marked Rachel's burial place. The woman Jacob had served 14 years to marry did not complete the journey beside him. She had left her father's house with Jacob, hidden Laban's gods beneath her saddle, endured the confrontation at Gilead, crossed the Jabbok, met Esau, and entered Canaan. She died giving birth to the second son she had asked God to add. Joseph and Benjamin now stood as Rachel's two sons within a household still ordered around the history of Jacob's unequal love. Israel moved on and pitched his tent beyond Migdal-eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went and slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Israel heard what he had done. Bilhah was Rachel's servant and had borne Dan and Naphtali to Jacob through Rachel's arrangement. After Rachel's death, Reuben's act violated another relationship within his father's household. Reuben was also Jacob's firstborn, the son Leah had named in hope that Jacob would love her. His place at the head of the sons now stood beside an offense Jacob knew about. Jacob's family had reached 12 sons. Leah had borne Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, followed by Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel's sons were Joseph and Benjamin. Bilhah, Rachel's servant, had borne Dan and Naphtali. Zilpah, Leah's servant, had borne Gad and Asher. The household promised before Jacob had a wife was now complete in its 12 sons, but its growth had preserved every division through which it formed. Leah and Rachel's rivalry remained visible in the sons associated with each mother. Simeon and Levi had acted together in violence at Shechem. Reuben's position as firstborn now stood beside his violation of Bilhah. Joseph and Benjamin were the sons of the wife Jacob had loved more than Leah, and Benjamin's birth had ended in Rachel's death. Within the wider span of Jacob's years in Canaan, Isaac's life also reached its end. Jacob came to his father at Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron. Abraham and Isaac had lived there as foreigners. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died. He was gathered to his people, old and full of days. His sons Esau and Jacob buried him. The brothers who had divided Isaac's household now stood together at their father's death. Esau had once expected Isaac's death to open the way for Jacob's murder. Instead, Jacob had returned. The brothers had embraced, and together they buried him. Isaac's blessing had placed Jacob over Esau. God had renamed Jacob Israel and repeated the promises of land, nations, and kings. But the future would now pass through sons, carrying rivalries and offenses of their own. The struggle between brothers had not disappeared. It had moved into the next generation. Esau's descendants were also becoming a people in their own right. His household included his wives Adah, Oholibamah, and Basemath. Adah bore Eliphaz, Basemath bore Reuel, Oholibamah bore Jush, Jalam, and Korah. These sons were born to Esau while he was living in Canaan. Esau gathered his wives, sons, daughters, the other members of his household, his livestock, and all the property he had acquired in Canaan. He moved away from Jacob into another land. The brothers' possessions had become too great for them to remain together. Their livestock required more land than the region could support, while both households occupied it. The same increase that had once separated Abraham and Lot now separated Isaac's sons from one another. But Jacob and Esau did not divide through another quarrel. Esau moved into the hill country of Seir and established himself there. Esau was also known as Edom. His sons became the heads of clans. Eliphaz, Esau's firstborn through Adah, fathered Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Eliphaz also had a concubine named Timnah, who bore Amalek. Reuel, Esau's son through Basemath, fathered Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. The sons of Oholibamah, Josh, Jalam, and Korah also became clan leaders. The hill country of Seir already held the descendants of Seir the Horite, organized through their own chiefs. Within that land, Esau's family expanded into the clans of Edom. Kings also ruled in Edom before any king ruled over the Israelites. One ruler succeeded another: Bela, Jobab, Husham, Hadad, Samlah, Shul, Baal-Hanan, and Hadar. Different cities served as royal centers, and the names of chiefs became associated with their own regions and settlements. Esau's departure did not leave him diminished. He had an established territory, numerous descendants, chiefs, and kings within the people that carried his second name. The older brother's future took shape in Seir. Jacob remained in Canaan, the land where Isaac had lived as a foreigner. His household was larger than Esau's immediate family, but its unity was far more fragile than its numbers suggested. Joseph was 17 years old and tended the flock with his brothers. He worked alongside the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought Jacob a bad report about them. Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because Joseph was the son of his old age. He made him a distinctive robe. The preference Jacob had once shown Rachel now became concentrated upon Rachel's son. The brothers could see that their father loved Joseph more than he loved them. Their response was hatred. They could not speak peaceably to Joseph. Then Joseph had a dream and told it to his brothers. The dream intensified their hatred. "Listen to this dream that I dreamed," Joseph said. He described the brothers binding sheaves of grain in a field. Joseph's sheaf rose and stood upright. Then the brothers' sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to his. His brothers understood the implied relationship immediately. "Are you actually going to reign over us?" they asked. "Are you really going to rule us?" They hated him even more because of the dream and because he had told it to them. The first dream transformed family preference into an image of authority. Joseph was not simply wearing a robe given by Jacob. In the dream, the brothers themselves bowed before him. Then Joseph dreamed again. He told this dream to his brothers as well. "The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me," he said. This time, the image extended beyond the brothers. Joseph also told the dream to his father. Jacob rebuked him. "What is this dream that you have dreamed?" he asked. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" The 11 stars matched Joseph's 11 brothers, and Jacob placed himself and Joseph's mother within the meaning of the sun and moon. Jacob did not accept the dream without challenge. Joseph's brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. The household now held an explosive combination. Jacob's love singled Joseph out. The robe made that preference visible. Joseph's reports placed him against his brother's conduct. His dreams placed the entire family beneath him, and he had spoken those dreams directly to the people shown bowing. The brothers then took Jacob's flock to graze near Shechem. Israel told Joseph that his brothers were pasturing the flock there and said he wanted to send Joseph to them. Joseph answered, "Here I am." Jacob instructed him to go and see whether his brothers were well and whether the flock was well. Then Joseph was to return with word. Jacob sent him from the valley of Hebron, and Joseph traveled toward Shechem. Shechem carried a violent history for this family. Dinah had been violated there. Simeon and Levi had killed the city's males, and the brothers had plundered it. Jacob had feared retaliation from the surrounding peoples before God directed the household to Bethel. Now Jacob's sons had brought the flock back into that region, and Joseph was sent to find them and report on their condition. A man found Joseph wandering in the fields near Shechem and asked what he was looking for. "I am seeking my brothers," Joseph answered. "Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." The man had heard the brothers say they were going to Dothan. He directed Joseph there. Joseph followed and found them near Dothan. The brothers saw him while he was still far away. Before Joseph came near, they conspired to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said. They proposed killing Joseph and throwing his body into one of the pits. Then they would say that a fierce animal had devoured him. Afterward, they would see what became of his dreams. Their words identified the dreams as the issue they intended to settle through Joseph's death. If the dreamer disappeared into a pit, his sheaf would never stand above theirs. The 11 stars would never bow. Reuben heard the plan and acted to rescue Joseph from their hands. "Let us not take his life," he said. He urged them not to shed blood. Instead, they could throw Joseph into a pit in the wilderness without laying a hand on him directly. Reuben intended to rescue Joseph afterward and return him to Jacob. As the firstborn, Reuben had already violated his father's household by sleeping with Bilhah. Here, when his brothers moved toward murder, he intervened to preserve Joseph's life. But he did not openly confront them with his full plan. He directed them toward the pit while intending to come back later. When Joseph reached his brothers, they seized him and stripped away the special robe Jacob had made for him. Then they took Joseph and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty and contained no water. The robe that displayed Jacob's love was now in the brothers' hands. Joseph himself was below them, alive but confined. Then the brothers sat down to eat. As they ate, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying gum, balm, and myrrh down toward Egypt. Judah spoke. "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" he asked. He proposed selling Joseph to the Ishmaelites instead. "Let not our hand be upon him," Judah said, "for he is our brother, our own flesh." The brothers listened to Judah. His proposal did not free Joseph or return him to Jacob. It replaced murder with sale. Joseph's blood would not be shed by their hands, but their brother would be removed from the household and carried away by strangers. When Midianite traders passed, Joseph was pulled from the pit and sold to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. The caravan took Joseph toward Egypt. The brothers had wanted to see what would become of his dreams. Their solution was to send the dreamer out of the land and into bondage. They had transformed their father's favored son into merchandise, moving south with gum, balm, and myrrh. Reuben returned to the pit. Joseph was gone. Reuben tore his clothes and went back to his brothers. "The boy is gone," he cried, "and where shall I go?" His private intention to restore Joseph had failed. The pit he chose as a means of rescue had become the place from which Joseph was sold. The brothers now had to account for Joseph's disappearance to their father. They took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the robe in its blood. Years earlier, Jacob had used young goats and Esau's clothing to deceive Isaac. Rebekah prepared the goats, while their skins disguised Jacob's hands and neck. Esau's clothes supplied the scent that persuaded his blind father. Now Jacob's sons used a goat and Joseph's clothing against him. They sent the blood-stained robe to their father with a carefully limited message. "This we have found," they said. "Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." They did not tell Jacob that Joseph was dead. They presented the object and allowed their father to construct the conclusion. Jacob recognized the robe. "It is my son's robe," he said. "A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." The blood accomplished what the brothers intended. Jacob recognized the garment he had given Joseph and supplied the explanation himself.
How could this happen?
The robe had first marked Joseph as the son loved above his brothers. Torn from Joseph and covered in blood, it became proof to Jacob that the same son had been violently killed. Jacob tore his own garments. He wrapped sackcloth around his waist and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but Jacob refused to be comforted. "I shall go down to the grave to my son mourning," he said. He wept for Joseph. The sons who knew Joseph was alive stood beside the father who believed him dead. They had prevented Jacob from seeing the captive moving toward Egypt, just as Jacob had once prevented Isaac from seeing the son kneeling before him. But this deception did not transfer a blessing in a single day. It placed Jacob inside grief, without a body to bury, and without a possibility of recovery he could recognize. Joseph's robe had returned, and for Jacob, that was enough to establish the loss. While Jacob mourned in Canaan, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt. The buyer was Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officers and the captain of the guard. Jacob believed that a wild animal had torn Joseph to pieces. Joseph was alive, but he had been separated from his father, his home, his robe, and his freedom. The favored son had entered the household of an Egyptian official as a slave. During this period, Judah separated from his brothers and stayed near an Adullamite named Hira. There, Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He married her and went into her. She conceived and gave birth to a son named She conceived again and bore another son, whom she named Onan. Then she bore a third son named Shelah. Judah was at Chezib when Shelah was born. Judah arranged a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. Was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Judah then commanded Onan to go into Tamar. "Perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her," Judah said, "and raise up offspring for your brother. Any child born through that union would continue line rather than Onan's." Onan knew that the offspring would not be counted as his. Whenever he went into Tamar, he spilled his semen on the ground so that he would not give offspring to his brother. The Lord regarded Onan's conduct as evil and put him to death. Judah had now lost his first two sons after each one became Tamar's husband. His remaining son, Shelah, was still young. Judah told Tamar to return to her father's house and remain there as a widow until Shelah grew up. But Judah feared that Shelah would die like his brothers. Tamar returned to her father's house. Judah had spoken of a future marriage between Tamar and Shelah, but his fear worked against the promise. Tamar remained a widow, waiting for the surviving son to reach adulthood. A considerable time passed, and Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. After Judah's period of mourning, he went to Timnah, where his sheep were being sheared. His friend Hira, the Adullamite, went with him. Tamar was told that her father-in-law was traveling to Timnah for the shearing of his sheep. By then, Shelah had grown, and Tamar had not been given to him as a wife. She removed her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself, and sat at the entrance to Enaim on the road to Timnah. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. He turned aside from the road and approached her. "Come now," he said.
Let me come in to you.
Judah did not know that the woman was Tamar. She asked, "What will you give me that you may come in to me?" Judah promised to send her a young goat from his flock. Tamar demanded a pledge until the goat arrived. "What pledge shall I give you?" Judah asked. "Your signet, your cord, and your staff that is in your hand," she answered. The objects identified Judah personally. He gave them to her, went into her, and she conceived by him. Afterward, Tamar rose and left. She removed the veil and put her widow's garments back on. Judah sent the young goat through Hira the Adullamite so that his pledge could be recovered from the woman. Hira went to the place but could not find her. He asked the local men, "Where is the prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim?" They answered that a woman serving in that role had not been there. Hira returned to Judah. "I have not found her," he said. The men of the place also said that no prostitute had been there. Judah told Hira to let the woman keep the objects. He did not want them to become a cause of public ridicule. He had sent the promised young goat, and Hira had failed to find her. 3 months later, Judah received a report concerning Tamar. "Your daughter-in-law has acted as a prostitute," he was told, "and she is pregnant by prostitution." Judah ordered, "Bring her out and let her be burned." Tamar was being brought out when she sent a message to her father-in-law. "I am pregnant by the man to whom these belong," she said. Then she used the same kind of request Jacob's sons had made when they presented Joseph's blood-stained robe. "Please identify whose these are, the signet, the cord, and the staff." Judah recognized them. "She is more righteous than I," he said, "because I did not give her to my son Shelah." The objects reversed the judgment Judah had pronounced. He had been prepared to condemn Tamar for pregnancy outside the promised marriage, but his own signet, cord, and staff identified him as the father. Tamar's action also exposed what Judah had withheld. Shelah was grown, yet Judah had not given him to her. Judah did not sleep with Tamar again. When the time came for her to give birth, twins were in her womb. During the delivery, one child put out a hand. The midwife tied a scarlet thread around his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But the child drew back his hand, and his brother emerged ahead of him. The midwife exclaimed, "What a breach you have made for yourself." He was named Perez, a name connected with breaking through. Then his brother was born with the scarlet thread around his wrist. He was named Zerah. Once again, the order between brothers turned at birth. The scarlet thread had marked the hand that appeared first, but Perez broke through and was born ahead of Zerah. Judah's first 2 sons had died, and Shelah had been withheld from Tamar. Through the woman Judah had sent away to wait, 2 more sons now entered his family. The line threatened by Er's death continued, but it continued only after Tamar forced Judah to recognize his failure toward her. In Egypt, Joseph's life was also moving through another man's household. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became successful while serving in the home of Potiphar, his Egyptian master. Potiphar saw that the Lord was with Joseph, and that the Lord gave success to everything Joseph did. Joseph found favor in Potiphar's sight and became his personal attendant. Then Potiphar placed Joseph over his household and entrusted everything he owned to his care. From the time Joseph received that responsibility, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's household because of Joseph. The blessing extended over everything Potiphar possessed in the house and in the field. Potiphar left all that he had in Joseph's hands. With Joseph in charge, Potiphar concerned himself only with the food he ate. Joseph had entered Egypt as a slave, sold for 20 pieces of silver. He now managed the estate of one of Pharaoh's officers. The God who had prospered Jacob inside Laban's household was with Joseph inside Potiphar's. Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. After a time, Potiphar's wife fixed her attention on him. "Lie with me," she said. Joseph refused. He explained that Potiphar trusted him completely. His master did not concern himself with anything in the house because Joseph managed it. Potiphar had placed everything he possessed into Joseph's hands. Joseph held greater authority in the household than anyone else, but one person remained outside that authority. "My master has withheld nothing from me except you," Joseph told her, "because you are his wife." Then Joseph named the act for what it would be. "How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Potiphar's wife continued speaking to Joseph day after day. Joseph would not listen to her request to lie beside her or be with her. His refusal preserved both his duty toward Potiphar and his obedience to God, but it did not end her pursuit. One day, Joseph entered the house to perform his work. The other men belonging to the household were not inside. Potiphar's wife grabbed Joseph by his garment. "Lie with me," she demanded. Joseph left the garment in her hand and fled outside. The robe Jacob gave Joseph had once been stripped from him by his brothers. That garment was dipped in blood and used to construct a lie about his death. Now another garment remained in someone else's hands, and it would become the physical evidence for another false accusation. When Potiphar's wife saw that Joseph had left his garment with her and run out of the house, she called to the men of the household. "Look," she told them, "my husband brought this Hebrew among us to make sport of us. He came in to me to lie with me, but I cried out with a loud voice." She claimed that when Joseph heard her cry, he abandoned his garment beside her and fled outside. Her accusation reversed the action the garment represented. Joseph had left it because he fled from her demand. She presented it as something he abandoned when her resistance exposed him. She kept Joseph's garment beside her until Potiphar came home. Then she gave her husband the same version of events. "The Hebrew servant whom you brought among us came in to me to make sport of me," she said. "But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Her words placed responsibility not only on Joseph, but also on Potiphar. She called Joseph the servant Potiphar had brought into the household. Potiphar heard his wife describe what his servant had done to her. He became angry. He took Joseph and placed him in the prison where the king's prisoners were confined. Joseph's position changed in a moment. Potiphar had entrusted his entire household to him. Joseph had refused the one relationship his master had withheld. Yet the garment left behind during that refusal supported his wife's accusation, and Joseph entered confinement as the man accused of violating his master's trust. But the Lord was with Joseph in prison. The Lord showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the prison keeper. The keeper placed all the prisoners in Joseph's hands, and Joseph became responsible for everything done there. The keeper paid no attention to anything under Joseph's authority because the Lord was with him. Whatever Joseph did, the Lord made successful. The setting had changed from Potiphar's house to the king's prison, but the pattern continued. Joseph entered at the bottom, received favor, and was entrusted with the people and work around him. Judah had been forced to identify his own signet, cord, and staff, and admit that Tamar was more righteous than he was. Joseph had left his garment behind to escape wrongdoing and had been condemned through a lie built around it. One brother's hidden act had been exposed. The other brother's faithful act had been concealed. Tamar now held twin sons within Judah's family. Joseph held responsibility among Pharaoh's prisoners. And inside that prison, another set of dreams was about to alter the direction of Jacob's divided household. Two of Pharaoh's officers soon entered the prison. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker had offended their king. Pharaoh became angry with them and placed them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and Joseph attended them. They remained in custody for some time. Then both men had dreams on the same night. Each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. He asked why their faces looked so sad. "We have had dreams," they answered, and there is no one to interpret them. Joseph did not claim that the power belonged to him. Do not interpretations belong to God? He asked. Please tell them to me. The chief cupbearer spoke first. In his dream, a vine appeared before him. The vine had 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms opened, and clusters of grapes ripened. Pharaoh's cup was in the cupbearer's hand. He took the grapes, pressed them into the cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Joseph gave the interpretation. The 3 branches represented 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh would lift up the cupbearer's head and restore him to his position. The cupbearer would once again place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as he had done before. Then Joseph made a personal request. Remember me when it is well with you, he said. Please show me kindness and mention me to Pharaoh, so that I may be brought out of this place. Joseph explained that he had been stolen from the land of the Hebrews. He had also done nothing in Egypt that deserved confinement in the pit. His brothers had sold him. Potiphar's wife had accused him falsely. Now Joseph saw the expected restoration of a royal officer as a path by which his own unjust confinement could end. The chief baker heard that Joseph had given the cupbearer a favorable interpretation, so he described his dream. 3 baskets of bread were on his head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked food for Pharaoh, but birds were eating the food from the basket. Joseph told him that the 3 baskets also represented 3 days, but the outcome would be completely different. Within 3 days, Pharaoh would lift the baker's head from him and hang him on a tree. Birds would eat his flesh. The dreams had come on the same night, and both used images from the men's former service. 1 cup returned to Pharaoh's hand. Food prepared for Pharaoh was consumed by birds. The same period of 3 days led 1 man back into office and the other to death. The 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday. He gave a feast for all his servants and brought the chief cupbearer and chief baker before them. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and the cupbearer once again placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Pharaoh hanged the chief baker. Everything happened as Joseph had interpreted, but the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. The restored official returned to Pharaoh's service, while Joseph remained in the prison. His request had been clear. The cupbearer had received the outcome Joseph announced, yet 2 full years passed before Joseph's name was spoken in Pharaoh's court. At the end of those 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing beside the Nile when 7 cows came up from the river. They were attractive and well-fed, and they grazed among the reeds. Then 7 other cows came up from the Nile. They were ugly and thin. They stood beside the first cows on the riverbank. The ugly, thin cows ate the 7 attractive, well-fed cows. Pharaoh awoke. Then he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 heads of grain grew on 1 stalk, full and healthy. After them came 7 other heads, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads swallowed the 7 full, healthy heads. Pharaoh awoke and realized he had been dreaming. In the morning, his spirit was troubled. He summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt and told them his dreams, but they could not interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer spoke. "Today I remember my offenses," he said. He recalled Pharaoh's anger against him and the chief baker and their confinement under the captain of the guard. Each man had dreamed on the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. A young Hebrew had been there with them, a servant of the captain of the guard. They told him their dreams, and he interpreted each one. The outcomes matched Joseph's words. The cupbearer had been restored to his office. The baker had been hanged. The memory Joseph requested returned only when Pharaoh needed what Joseph had already demonstrated. The cupbearer did not mention Joseph merely as a prisoner asking for release. He identified him as the man whose interpretations had been fulfilled. Pharaoh sent for Joseph. Joseph was brought quickly out of the dungeon. He shaved, changed his clothes, and appeared before Pharaoh. Pharaoh told him, "I have had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh, as he had answered the two officers, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Joseph stood before the ruler of Egypt because his interpretations had been remembered, but he again refused to present the ability as his own possession. Pharaoh described the first dream in greater detail. He had been standing on the bank of the Nile when 7 well-fed, attractive cows came up and grazed among the reeds. Then 7 other cows emerged. They were gaunt, ugly, and thin, worse in appearance than any Pharaoh had seen in Egypt. The thin cows ate the first 7. Even after swallowing them, they looked just as thin and ugly as before. Then Pharaoh described the grain. 7 full, good heads grew on one stalk. 7 withered heads, thin and scorched by the east wind, followed them. The thin heads swallowed the good heads. Pharaoh had told these dreams to the magicians, but none could explain them. Joseph answered that Pharaoh's 2 dreams carried one meaning. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows represented 7 years. The 7 good heads of grain also represented 7 years. They belonged to the same message. The 7 thin, ugly cows that came afterward represented 7 years as well. So did the 7 empty heads scorched by the east wind. They represented 7 years of famine. Joseph repeated the central point. God had shown Pharaoh what he was about to do. 7 years of great abundance were coming throughout Egypt. They would be followed by 7 years of famine. The abundance would be forgotten, and the famine would consume the land. The shortage would be so severe that the earlier abundance would no longer be evident. The 2 dreams carried the same warning because the matter had been established by God and would happen soon. Then Joseph moved from interpretation to action. Pharaoh should select a discerning and wise man and place him over Egypt. He should also appoint overseers throughout the land and take 1/5 of the produce during the 7 years of abundance. The officials were to collect food from the good years ahead. Grain would be stored under Pharaoh's authority in the cities and guarded there. That food would become a reserve for the 7 years of famine. With the grain secured in advance, Egypt would not be destroyed by the shortage. The dreams did not promise escape from famine. They revealed a limited period in which preparation was possible. The abundance itself had to be administered as the means of survival. Joseph's proposal pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then he addressed Joseph. "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you." Pharaoh placed Joseph over his household. All the people of Egypt would submit to Joseph's command. Only in relation to the throne would Pharaoh be greater. Then Pharaoh declared, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." He removed his signet ring from his own hand and placed it on Joseph's. He dressed Joseph in fine linen and placed a gold chain around his neck. Joseph rode in Pharaoh's 2nd chariot, and people called out before him to bow the knee. The man taken from the pit at Dothan and sold for 20 pieces of silver now carried Pharaoh's ring. The prisoner brought from the dungeon now rode in the chariot directly beneath Pharaoh's own. Authority over Potiphar's household and authority over the king's prisoners had prepared him to administer a nation, but the appointment itself came in a single day. Pharaoh reinforced Joseph's authority. "I am Pharaoh," he said, "and without your consent no one shall lift hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zaphanath-Paneah. He also gave him Asenath as his wife. She was the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered Pharaoh's service. 13 years had passed since his brothers stripped away his robe and sold him. Jacob had spent those years mourning a son he believed torn apart. Joseph had spent them as a slave and prisoner. Now, He went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. The 7 years of abundance began. The land produced plentifully. Joseph collected food during those 7 years and stored it in the cities. The produce from the fields surrounding each city was placed within that city. He accumulated grain in enormous quantities, like the sand of the sea. Eventually, he stopped measuring it because it was beyond measure. The abundance Joseph had predicted became the reserve Joseph had designed. The interpretation was proven not only by the harvest, but also by the administrative system built around it. Grain moved from the surrounding fields into secured city stores under Pharaoh's authority. Before the famine began, Asenath bore Joseph 2 sons. Joseph named the first Manasseh. "God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's household," he said. The name connected his first son with relief from the affliction behind him. Joseph had not lost knowledge of his father or brothers. He named them as the household from which he had been separated. But his Egyptian life now included a wife, a son, authority and work that reached across the country. He named the second son Ephraim. "God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction," Joseph said. Egypt remained the land where he had suffered enslavement, false accusation, and imprisonment. It was also the land where he became fruitful. His second son carried both realities in his name. Then the 7 years of abundance ended. The 7 years of famine began, exactly as Joseph had said. The famine spread through every land, but throughout Egypt there was food. When the people of Egypt became hungry, they cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh directed them to Joseph. "Go to Joseph," he told them. "Whatever he says to you, do." The famine extended across the whole face of the land. Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians as the shortage intensified. People from across the earth came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. The dreams of cows and grain had become the condition of nations. Joseph now stood at the point where stored food passed into hungry hands, and the famine was reaching toward Canaan, toward the father who mourned him and the brothers who had sold him. Jacob learned that grain was available in Egypt. He looked at his sons and asked, "Why do you keep looking at one another?" Then he told them what he had heard. "There is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." The famine forced movement into the household. The sons who had sent Joseph toward Egypt now had to travel in the same direction because the food stored under his authority had become their means of survival. 10 of Joseph's brothers went to Egypt to buy grain. Jacob did not send Benjamin with them. He feared that harm would come to him. Benjamin was Rachel's surviving son in Jacob's sight. Joseph had been sent away to check on his brothers and had never returned. Jacob would not expose Benjamin to the same kind of journey. The sons of Israel reached Egypt among the many people coming to buy food because the famine had spread through Canaan. Joseph was governor over Egypt and personally oversaw the sale of grain to people coming from outside the country. When Joseph's brothers appeared before him, they bowed with their faces to the ground. The image Joseph had described at 17 now stood before him in physical form. The brothers who had asked whether he would rule over them were bowing before him as the ruler who controlled the grain they needed. Joseph recognized them. They did not recognize Joseph. The young brother they had stripped and pulled from a pit now stood before them with an Egyptian name, Egyptian clothing, and authority received from Pharaoh. He knew exactly who had entered his presence. While they saw the governor responsible for Egypt's food, Joseph treated them as strangers and spoke harshly. "Where do you come from?" he demanded. They answered, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." Joseph remembered the dreams he had dreamed about them. Then he accused them. "You are spies. You have come to see the exposed places of the land." The brothers denied it. "No, my lord, they said. "Your servants have come to buy food." They described themselves as sons of one man and insisted they were honest men rather than spies. Joseph repeated the charge. "No, you have come to see the exposed places of the land." The brothers gave him more information about their family. "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph stood before them as the brother they described as no longer existing. Their answer also told him that Benjamin was alive and remained with Jacob. Joseph did not reveal that knowledge. "It is as I said," he answered. "You are spies." Then he established a test. "By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here." Joseph ordered them to send one brother back to Canaan to bring Benjamin. The others would remain confined. Their claim about being one family could then be tested. If Benjamin appeared, their words would be verified. If he did not, Joseph declared by the life of Pharaoh that they were spies. He placed all 10 brothers in custody for 3 days. The men who had thrown Joseph into an empty pit were now confined by Joseph's order. He had once heard them decide what to do with his life while he remained beneath them. Now they waited together under his power without knowing whose judgment they faced. On the 3rd day, Joseph changed the terms. "Do this and live," he told them, "for I fear God." Instead of keeping 9 brothers while one returned, Joseph would detain only one. The rest could carry grain back to their hungry households. But they still had to bring their youngest brother to Egypt. If they did, their words would be verified, and they would not die. The brothers agreed. Then, standing before Joseph, they spoke to one another about the brother they had sold. "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother," they said. "We saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, but we would not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." Their confinement and the demand involving Benjamin awakened the memory of Joseph's pleas at Dothan. Their own confession brought their guilt toward Joseph into the open. Now the brothers interpreted their danger in Egypt as a reckoning for what they had done. Reuben reminded them of his warning. "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy?" he asked. "But you would not listen. Now there comes a reckoning for his blood." Reuben had urged them not to take Joseph's life and had intended to rescue him from the pit. Years later, he still separated his warning from their decision and treated the present crisis as payment for Joseph's blood. The brothers did not know that Joseph understood every word. Joseph had been speaking to them through an interpreter, so they assumed their conversation remained private from the Egyptian governor. Joseph turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them again. He selected Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph gave orders for the brothers' sacks to be filled with grain. He also commanded that each man's silver be returned to his sack and that they receive provisions for their journey. The order was carried out. The brothers loaded the grain onto their donkeys and left Egypt. They carried what their households needed, but Simeon remained behind. Their return to Canaan would not complete the matter. Benjamin had become the condition for Simeon's release and for any future proof that they were telling the truth. At a lodging place along the way, one of the brothers opened his sack to feed his donkey. He saw his silver lying in the opening of the sack. "My silver has been returned," he told the others. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned trembling toward one another. "What is this that God has done to us?" they asked. They did not know that Joseph had ordered the money returned. From their position, the discovery added another threat. They had left Egypt under suspicion, with one brother detained, and now the payment for the grain appeared among their possessions. They continued to Canaan and reached Jacob. Then they told him everything that had happened. "The man who is lord of the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as spies," they said. They explained that they had denied the accusation and described themselves as honest men. They told the ruler they were 12 brothers, sons of one father. One brother was no more, and the youngest was with Jacob in Canaan. Then they repeated the governor's demand. "By this I shall know that you are honest men," he had told them. "Leave one of your brothers with me, take grain for the hunger of your households and go. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are not spies but honest men. I will return your brother to you, and you may trade in the land." The brothers had returned with grain, but their report placed the next decision on Jacob. The Egyptian ruler demanded Benjamin. Simeon's freedom depended upon it. As the brothers emptied their sacks, each man found his bundle of silver inside. The single discovery on the road now became 10. The money paid for the grain had returned with every brother. When they and Jacob saw the bundles of silver, they were afraid. Jacob responded by gathering the losses around himself. "You have bereaved me of my children," he said. "Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin." Then Jacob declared, "All this has come against me." Joseph was alive and governing Egypt, but Jacob knew him only through a blood-stained robe. Simeon was alive in Egyptian custody, but Jacob saw another son removed from the household. Benjamin was still beside him, and the brothers were asking Jacob to place him on the same road that had already taken Joseph and Simeon. Reuben offered his own sons as security. "You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring Benjamin back to you," he told Jacob. "Put him in my hands, and I will return him to you." Reuben's pledge placed 2 more lives against the possible loss of Benjamin. But killing Reuben's sons would not restore Benjamin if he failed to return. Jacob refused. "My son shall not go down with you," he said. He explained the distinction that governed his decision. His brother is dead, and he alone is left. Rachel had borne Joseph and Benjamin. In Jacob's understanding, Joseph had been torn apart. Benjamin was the one remaining son of the woman he had loved and lost. "If harm should happen to him on the journey you are to make," Jacob continued, "you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." Jacob had once been sent away because Rebekah feared losing both sons in one day. Now he held Benjamin back because he believed he had already lost one of Rachel's sons and could not survive the loss of the other. So Benjamin remained with Jacob. Simeon remained confined in Egypt. The brothers possessed grain, but the governor's condition remained fixed. They could not return on the same terms without bringing their youngest brother. And the famine that had driven them to Egypt was still consuming the land. The famine grew severe. When Jacob's household had eaten the grain brought from Egypt, Jacob told his sons to return and buy a little more food. Judah immediately reminded him of the condition imposed by the Egyptian governor. The man solemnly warned us, saying, "You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you." If Jacob sent Benjamin, Judah said, the brothers would go and buy food. If Jacob refused, they would not go, because the man had forbidden them to appear without their youngest brother. Israel asked why they had treated him so badly by telling the man they had another brother. The sons explained that the governor had questioned them carefully about their family. He had asked whether their father was still alive and whether they had another brother. They answered the questions he put to them. They had not known that he would demand, "Bring your brother down." The information had seemed part of the governor's suspicion that they were spies. The brothers had no reason to connect his interest in their father and youngest brother with Joseph, the man standing before them. Judah then addressed Jacob directly. "Send the boy with me," he said. "We will arise and go so that we and you and our little ones may live and not die." Judah offered himself as Benjamin's guarantee. "From my hand you may require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then I shall bear the blame before you all my life." He also pointed to the effect of their delay. If they had not waited, the brothers could already have traveled to Egypt and returned twice. Reuben had offered the lives of his 2 sons if he failed to bring Benjamin home. Judah offered his own permanent guilt before Jacob. He placed responsibility for Benjamin directly upon himself. Israel accepted what the famine had made unavoidable. "If it must be so, then do this," he said. He instructed his sons to carry a gift to the Egyptian ruler. They were to fill their bags with some of the best products of the land: balm, honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. They were also to take twice the amount of silver required for the grain. The money returned in their sacks had to be carried back, along with payment for the new purchase. Jacob said its return might have been an oversight. Then he told them to take Benjamin and go. Jacob entrusted the outcome to God Almighty. "May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man," he said, "so that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin." Then Jacob accepted the danger in words that did not lessen it. "As for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." The sons took the gift, the doubled silver, and Benjamin. They traveled to Egypt and appeared before Joseph. Joseph saw Benjamin with them. He immediately instructed the steward of his house to bring the men inside. An animal was to be slaughtered and a meal prepared, because the brothers would eat with Joseph at noon. The steward did as Joseph commanded and led the brothers to Joseph's house. Instead of receiving the invitation as favor, the brothers became afraid. They connected the move to the silver that had been returned in their sacks after the first journey. They believed they were being brought inside so that Joseph's men could attack them, overpower them, take them as slaves, and seize their donkeys. Before entering, they approached Joseph's steward at the doorway and explained what had happened. "Please, my lord," they said, "we came down the first time to buy food." They described stopping for the night and opening their sacks. Each man's silver had been returned in full and was lying inside. "We have brought it back with us," they said. They had also brought additional silver to purchase more grain. They did not know who had put the original payment into their sacks. The steward answered, "Peace to you. Do not be afraid." Then he gave an explanation they had not expected. "Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver." The steward's words removed the charge the brothers feared. The grain had been paid for, and the returned money was described as treasure given through their God. Then the steward brought Simeon out to them. The brother left in confinement was restored when Benjamin appeared, exactly as the governor had promised. The steward brought all the brothers into Joseph's house. He gave them water to wash their feet and provided fodder for their donkeys. The men prepared their gift for Joseph because they had been told they would eat there at noon. When Joseph came home, they carried the gift inside and presented it to him. Then they bowed to the ground before him again. Joseph asked about their welfare. "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke?" he asked. "Is he still alive?" They answered, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." Then they bowed down again. Joseph looked up and saw Benjamin, his mother's son. "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me?" he asked. Then Joseph addressed Benjamin. "God be gracious to you, my son." The sight of his brother moved Joseph so deeply that he hurried away to weep. He entered a private room and wept there. Then he washed his face, came out, and controlled himself. "Serve the food," he ordered. The meal was arranged in 3 groups. Joseph ate by himself. The brothers ate together. The Egyptians in Joseph's household ate separately because Egyptians would not eat with Hebrews. Sharing such a meal was detestable to them. The brothers were seated before Joseph in order, from the firstborn according to his birthright to the youngest according to his youth. They looked at one another in astonishment. Joseph had already known their shared father and the existence of Benjamin because they had told him. But now the seating displayed precise knowledge of the order in which all 11 brothers had been born. Food was served to them from Joseph's table. Benjamin's portion was 5 times larger than any portion given to the others. Years earlier, Jacob's special robe had made his greater love for Joseph visible to the brothers. That preference had contributed to their hatred and their decision at Dothan. At Joseph's table, another son of Rachel was singled out before them. But the brothers did not turn against Benjamin. They drank and celebrated with Joseph. The meal joined Simeon's release, the governor's questions about Jacob, Joseph's blessing over Benjamin, the ordered seating, and the unequal portions. Yet Joseph's identity remained concealed. Before the brothers departed, Joseph gave another command to his steward. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry," he said. "Put each man's silver in the opening of his sack." Then Joseph added one more object. "Put my cup, the silver cup, in the opening of the youngest brother's sack, along with his money for the grain." The steward did exactly as Joseph instructed. At daybreak, the brothers were sent away with their donkeys. They had recovered Simeon, received food, eaten in the governor's house, and retained Benjamin. The journey that Jacob feared appeared ready to end, with every son returning. They had not traveled far from the city when Joseph spoke to his steward again. "Go after the men," he commanded. "When you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil?'" The steward was to accuse them of stealing Joseph's silver cup, the cup from which his master drank and by which he practiced divination. "You have done evil in doing this," the steward was to say. The steward overtook the brothers and delivered Joseph's accusation. They answered with complete disbelief. "Why does my lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing." They pointed to their conduct with the earlier silver. "The money that we found in the openings of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your lord's house?" Confident that the charge was false, the brothers proposed their own sentence. "Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves." The steward modified their terms. "Let it be as you say," he answered. "The one with whom it is found shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent." Each brother quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. The steward searched them in order, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. The brothers tore their clothes. They loaded their donkeys again and returned to the city. This time, they did not continue toward Canaan while leaving the accused brother behind. Every one of them went back with Benjamin. Judah and his brothers entered Joseph's house while Joseph was still there. They fell to the ground before him. Joseph demanded, "What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination?" Judah answered for the brothers, "What shall we say to my lord? What shall we speak? How can we justify ourselves?" He did not repeat the confident denial they had given on the road. The cup had been produced from Benjamin's sack, and Judah placed the entire group under judgment. "God has found out the guilt of your servants," he said. Then he offered all the brothers as slaves. "Here we are, my lord's servants, both we and the one in whose hand the cup was found." Joseph refused collective punishment. "Far be it from me that I should do so," he said. "Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. As for the rest of you, go up in peace to your father." The command recreated the choice that had once confronted the brothers at Dothan. They could return to Jacob without Rachel's favored son and offer an explanation for his disappearance. This time, they would not need a blood-stained robe. The ruler of Egypt had declared Benjamin guilty and had released the rest. But Judah had guaranteed Benjamin's return. He approached Joseph. "Please, my lord, let your servant speak a word in my lord's ears, and do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself." Judah began by repeating the questions Joseph had asked during their first encounter. My Lord asked his servants, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" The brothers had answered that they had an aged father and a young brother born in his old age. The young man's brother was dead. He alone remained from his mother, and his father loved him. Joseph had then commanded them to bring that brother down so that he could see him. Judah explained how they had answered. The boy cannot leave his father. If he should leave his father would die. But Joseph had insisted that unless Benjamin came with them, they would not see his face again. Judah continued. When the brothers returned to Jacob, they repeated Joseph's words. Later, when their father told them to return and buy more food, they explained that they could go only if Benjamin went with them. Then Judah repeated Jacob's response. Jacob had told them, "You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah had all borne Jacob children, yet when he spoke of Joseph and Benjamin, he referred to Rachel alone as my wife." Jacob continued, "One left me, and I said, 'Surely he has been torn to pieces. I have never seen him since.'" Judah was speaking those words directly to Joseph. The son Jacob believed, torn apart, stood listening while Judah described the grief produced by the brothers' deception. Jacob had then warned them about Benjamin. "If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hair in sorrow to the grave." Judah now connected that warning with the decision Joseph had placed before them. "Therefore, when I come to your servant, my father and the boy is not with us, since his life is bound up with the boy's life. As soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die." Judah said that he and his brothers would bring Jacob's gray hair down to the grave in sorrow. Then he explained his personal obligation. "Your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, 'If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life.'" Judah had once proposed selling Joseph rather than killing him. He had watched the favored son of Rachel disappear toward Egypt and then helped place the blood-stained robe before Jacob. Now Judah stood before the same brother without recognizing him and refused to repeat the abandonment. "Please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my lord," Judah said, "and let the boy go back with his brothers." He offered his own freedom for Benjamin's. Then Judah gave the reason that overruled every possibility of saving himself. "How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me?" He could not return to Jacob carrying food, but without Benjamin. He could not stand before his father and expose him to the loss he had described. Judah ended with one final appeal. "Let me not see the evil that would find my father." Joseph could no longer control himself before everyone standing near him. "Make everyone leave me," he cried. The Egyptian attendants withdrew. Joseph was alone with his brothers when he revealed himself. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and the news reached Pharaoh's household. "I am Joseph," he told his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" The brothers could not answer. They stood dismayed before him. The ruler whose silver cup had been found in Benjamin's sack was the brother they had sold. The man who knew their birth order, asked repeatedly about Jacob, released Simeon, favored Benjamin, and understood their private conversation was Joseph. He invited them closer. "Come near to me, please." They approached. "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." Joseph named their act directly. He did not describe his arrival in Egypt as an accident, and he did not conceal what the brothers had done. Then he told them how to understand their present position. "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." The famine had already lasted 2 years. 5 more years remained, in which there would be neither plowing nor harvest. Joseph explained that God had sent him ahead of the family to preserve a remnant on the earth and keep them alive through a great deliverance. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. The brothers had sold Joseph. God had sent Joseph ahead. Joseph held both statements together. Their action had been real, and God had carried it toward an outcome they had not intended. Joseph's suffering had placed him where the famine required him to be. God had made him a father to Pharaoh, lord over Pharaoh's entire household, and ruler throughout Egypt. Then Joseph gave his brothers an urgent command: "Hurry and go up to my father." They were to give Jacob a message in Joseph's own name. "Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay." Jacob would live in the land of Goshen and remain near Joseph. He was to bring his children, grandchildren, flocks, herds, and everything he possessed. Joseph would provide for him there because 5 years of famine remained. Without that provision, Jacob's household and everything belonging to him would fall into poverty. Joseph pointed to the evidence before his brothers. Their own eyes could see him. Benjamin's eyes could see him. The man speaking was Joseph himself. They were to tell Jacob about all the honor Joseph possessed in Egypt and everything they had witnessed. Then they were to bring their father down quickly. Joseph threw his arms around Benjamin's neck and wept. Benjamin also wept on Joseph's neck. Then Joseph kissed all his brothers and wept over them. After that, the brothers spoke with him. The concealment that had governed their 2 journeys was over. Joseph no longer addressed them through an interpreter or tested their claims as strangers. They could finally speak as brothers. The report that Joseph's brothers had arrived reached Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh and his servants were pleased. Pharaoh told Joseph to instruct the brothers to load their animals and return to Canaan. They were to bring their father and their households back to Egypt. Pharaoh promised them the best of the land, and they would eat from Egypt's abundance. He also authorized wagons from Egypt for their wives and children, and for Jacob. They were not to concern themselves with the possessions they left behind, because the best of Egypt would be theirs. The sons of Israel followed these instructions. Joseph gave them wagons according to Pharaoh's command and supplied provisions for the journey. He gave each brother a change of clothes. To Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. Joseph also sent gifts to Jacob, 10 male donkeys loaded with good things from Egypt, and 10 female donkeys carrying grain, bread, and other provisions for his father's journey. Then Joseph sent his brothers away. As they departed, he warned them, "Do not quarrel on the way." The brothers now had to return to the father they had deceived. For years, they had watched Jacob mourn Joseph while knowing the robe did not tell the truth. Now they carried wagons, provisions, clothing, silver, and a message that would expose the deception by restoring the son. They traveled out of Egypt and reached Jacob in Canaan. "Joseph is still alive," they told him. "He is ruler over all the land of Egypt." Jacob's heart became numb because he did not believe them. The same sons who had brought him Joseph's blood-stained robe were now telling him Joseph lived. Their earlier deception had shaped the grief against which this announcement had to be heard. Then the brothers repeated everything Joseph had said. Jacob saw the wagons Joseph had sent to carry him to Egypt. His spirit revived. "It is enough," Israel said. "Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." The son Jacob had mourned for many days had not been torn apart. Joseph had survived enslavement and imprisonment and had risen to authority over the country, holding the grain that kept Jacob's household alive. Israel set out with everything he had. When he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Beersheba stood inside the family's history of departure and promise. Isaac had lived there, built an altar there, and received the assurance that God would bless and multiply him. Jacob had left from Beersheba when Isaac sent him toward Paddan Aram. Now Jacob stood there again, preparing to leave Canaan for Egypt. God spoke to Israel in visions during the night. "Jacob, Jacob." Jacob answered, "Here I am." God identified himself. "I am God, the God of your father." Then he addressed the danger contained in the journey. "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation." The promise given in Canaan would not be lost through the descent into another land. God would make Jacob's family into a great nation in Egypt. "I myself will go down with you to Egypt," God continued, "and I will also surely bring you up again." Then God spoke of Joseph. "Joseph's hand shall close your eyes." Jacob would not merely see Joseph alive. Joseph would remain with him through the end of his life. Jacob rose from Beersheba. His sons placed Jacob, their children, and their wives in the wagons Pharaoh had provided. They brought their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan. Jacob and all his descendants traveled toward Egypt. His sons and grandsons, his daughters and granddaughters, everyone belonging to his household. The family moving south had begun with the children born through Leah and Rachel's rivalry in Paddan Aram. It had expanded through sons, daughters, grandchildren, and servants. The names of those entering Egypt showed how much had grown from the man who once crossed the Jordan carrying only his staff. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, entered with his sons Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. Simeon came with Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, whose mother was a Canaanite woman. Levi came with Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Judah came with Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. And Onan had died in Canaan. Perez's sons, Hezron and Hamul, also belonged to the household descending into Egypt. Issachar came with Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron. Zebulun came with Sered, Elon, and Jaleel. These were the sons Leah had borne to Jacob in Paddan Aram, along with Dinah. With their children, Leah's branch of the family numbered 33. The descendants associated with Zilpah also traveled with Jacob. Gad came with Ziphion, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. Asher came with Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, and their sister Sarah. Beriah's sons were Heber and Malchiel. These 16 belonged to the line Zilpah had borne into Jacob's household. Rachel's sons were Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph was already in Egypt, where Asenath had borne him Manasseh and Ephraim. Benjamin's sons were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Muppim, Hupim, and Ard. Rachel's branch numbered 14. Bilhah's sons also brought their families. Dan's son was Hushim. Naphtali's sons were Jazil, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These 7 belonged to the line Bilhah had borne into the household. The direct descendants who traveled with Jacob numbered 66, not including the wives of his sons. Joseph and his 2 sons were already in Egypt. Altogether, Jacob's household in Egypt numbered 70. The numbers did not describe a nation yet. They described one extended family carrying all its relationships across the border. Leah's sons, Rachel's sons, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, the grandchildren of Jacob, and the descendants already born through Joseph in Egypt. Jacob sent Judah ahead to Joseph to receive direction toward Goshen. Judah had offered himself in Benjamin's place and spoken for the family before Joseph. Now he traveled ahead of Jacob's household to guide their approach into Egypt. They arrived in the land of Goshen. Joseph prepared his chariot and went there to meet Israel, his father. When Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around Jacob's neck and wept there for a long time. Jacob had once held Joseph's blood-stained robe and concluded that his son had been torn to pieces. Now he held Joseph himself. Israel said, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." At Peniel, Jacob had seen the face of God and survived. When Esau embraced him, Jacob said seeing his brother's accepting face was like seeing the face of God. Now the face before him belonged to the son whose death had defined years of his life. The grief built upon the robe ended in Joseph's embrace, but the family had not simply arrived to visit. The famine would continue for 5 years, and Jacob's entire household needed a recognized place within Egypt. Joseph addressed his brothers and everyone in Jacob's household. He would go to Pharaoh and report their arrival. "My brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me," Joseph would say. He would tell Pharaoh that the men were shepherds and had always worked with livestock. They had brought their flocks, herds, and everything they possessed. Then Joseph prepared them for Pharaoh's questions. "When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers.' Their answer would allow them to settle in Goshen." Joseph explained that shepherds were detestable to the Egyptians. Under Pharaoh's invitation and Joseph's protection, the family would truthfully identify themselves as shepherds, and Egyptian contempt for that work would allow Jacob's household to settle apart in Goshen. Jacob had recovered Joseph and reached the place where his family could survive. Now they had to stand before Pharaoh and secure the terms under which Israel would live in Egypt. Joseph went to Pharaoh and announced that his father, brothers, flocks, herds, and possessions had arrived from Canaan and were now in Goshen. He selected 5 of his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked, "What is your occupation?" They gave the answer Joseph had prepared. "Your servants are shepherds, as our fathers were." Then they explained why they had entered Egypt. "We have come to live in the land for a time, because the famine is severe in Canaan, and there is no pasture for your servants' flocks. Please let your servants live in the land of Goshen." Pharaoh addressed Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land." He approved Goshen as their home. Then Pharaoh added another possibility. If Joseph knew capable men among his brothers, he could place them in charge of Pharaoh's livestock. The family had entered Egypt as shepherds, and Pharaoh allowed them to continue that work in a region suited to their animals. Their occupation distinguished them from the Egyptians, but it also gave them a defined place and a possible role within Pharaoh's own household. Joseph then brought Jacob before Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked him, "How many are the days of the years of your life?" Jacob answered, "The days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. He described those years as few and hard. He had not reached the years of his fathers during their sojourning. Jacob spoke as a man still living away from permanent possession. He had been born in Canaan, fled to Paddan Aram, returned to Canaan, and now stood in Egypt. The land had been promised to him, but his life had continued as a journey through places controlled by other men. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh again and withdrew from his presence. Joseph settled his father and brothers in Egypt. He gave them property in the best part of the land, in the region of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. He also supplied food for Jacob, his brothers, and everyone in their households, according to the number of their dependents. The family had come because the famine threatened their survival. In Egypt, they received land for their livestock and food from the stores Joseph had built. Outside Goshen, the famine continued to reshape the country. Food had become scarce throughout Egypt and Canaan. The famine was so severe that both lands were wasting away. Joseph collected all the money found in Egypt and Canaan through the sale of grain. He brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Eventually, the money in Egypt and Canaan was spent. The Egyptians came to Joseph. "Give us food," they said. "Why should we die before your eyes because our money is gone?" Joseph offered the next exchange. "Give your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock if your money is gone." The people brought their horses, flocks, herds, and donkeys. Joseph supplied them with food in exchange for their animals and carried them through that year. When the year ended, they returned to him. "We will not hide from my lord that our money is gone," they said. The livestock also belongs to my lord. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord except our bodies and our land." Then they offered both. "Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land in exchange for food." They would become Pharaoh's servants. They asked Joseph to give them seed so that they could live, and the land would not become desolate. Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. Every Egyptian sold his field because the famine was too severe to endure. The land became Pharaoh's, and the people came under his service throughout the country. The land belonging to the priests was the exception. Pharaoh provided the priests with a fixed allowance of food, so they did not have to sell their fields. Joseph then addressed the people whose land had become Pharaoh's. "Today I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh," he said. He gave them seed to plant the ground. Under the arrangement Joseph established, 1/5 of the harvest would belong to Pharaoh. The remaining 4/5 could be used as seed for the fields and food for the people, their households and their children. The people answered, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." Joseph made the 1/5 portion a statute over the land of Egypt. The priest's land remained outside that requirement because it had not become Pharaoh's property. The famine administration had moved through a clear sequence. Grain was first sold for money. When the money was spent, food was exchanged for livestock. When the livestock belonged to Pharaoh, the people offered their land and service. Joseph then returned seed under terms that preserved 4/5 for cultivation and household food, while giving 1/5 to Pharaoh. Through that system, Egypt survived the years Joseph had predicted, and Pharaoh's ownership expanded over its money, livestock, land, and labor. Jacob's household experienced a different result. Israel lived in Goshen, acquired property there, and became fruitful. The family multiplied greatly. The land where Joseph had once been enslaved now preserved his father's household. The famine that stripped Egyptian landholders of their property did not strip Israel of his. Under Joseph's provision and Pharaoh's grant, the family gained holdings and increased. Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years. His life reached 147 years. As the time of his death approached, Jacob called Joseph. "If I have found favor in your sight," he said, "place your hand under my thigh and promise to deal with me in steadfast love and faithfulness." Then Jacob gave the condition of the promise: "Do not bury me in Egypt." He wanted to lie with his fathers. Joseph was to carry him out of Egypt and bury him in their burial place. Joseph answered, "I will do as you have said." Jacob demanded an oath. "Swear to me." Joseph swore. Then Israel bowed at the head of his bed. Jacob had accepted life in Egypt, but he would not allow Egypt to become the destination of his body. His household could multiply in Goshen, and Joseph could govern beneath Pharaoh, but Jacob's burial remained tied to the fathers and the land God had promised. Sometime later, Joseph was told that his father was ill. He took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and went to Jacob. Jacob received word that Joseph had come. Israel gathered his strength and sat up on the bed. He began by speaking of the promise given to him before Egypt. "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me." Jacob repeated what God had said there. "I will make you fruitful and multiply you. I will make you into a community of peoples, and I will give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession." Then Jacob turned to the 2 sons standing with Joseph. "Now your 2 sons, who were born to you in Egypt before I came to you here, are mine." He named the younger first. "Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are." Jacob was claiming Joseph's sons as his own sons. They would not stand only as grandchildren within Joseph's branch. They would receive places alongside Jacob's firstborn sons, Any children born to Joseph after Ephraim and Manasseh would remain Joseph's. Their inheritance would be associated with the names of their brothers. The decision gave Joseph a double place within Israel. Instead of a single line named for Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh would each stand within the inheritance as sons of Jacob. Then Jacob spoke of Rachel. When I came from Paddan Aram, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way, while there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Joseph and Benjamin had been the two sons Rachel bore. Rachel died when Benjamin was born. Now Jacob claimed Joseph's two Egyptian-born sons as his own within the family Rachel had not lived to see reach Egypt. Israel looked at Joseph's sons. "Who are these?" he asked. Jacob's eyes had become dim with age, and he could not see clearly. Joseph answered, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here." Jacob said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Joseph brought the boys close. Jacob kissed them and embraced them. Then Israel spoke to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and now God has allowed me to see your children also." Jacob had believed Joseph dead for years. His expectation had been to descend to the grave mourning. Instead, he had lived 17 years near Joseph in Egypt and now held Joseph's sons in his arms. Joseph moved Ephraim and Manasseh from between Jacob's knees and bowed with his face to the ground. Then he positioned the boys carefully for the blessing. Joseph took Ephraim in his right hand and guided him toward Jacob's left hand. He took Manasseh in his left hand and guided him toward Jacob's right. Manasseh was the firstborn, so Joseph placed him where Jacob's right hand could rest upon him. But Israel crossed his hands. He placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, even though Ephraim was the younger. He placed his left hand on Manasseh, the firstborn. Jacob had entered the world, gripping the heel of his older brother. Before his birth, the older had been appointed to serve the younger. He later crossed the expected order through the birthright and Isaac's blessing. Now, with failing eyesight like Isaac's, Jacob placed the younger son ahead of the firstborn. But he did not do it through confusion, disguise, or another person's deception. His hands crossed deliberately. Jacob blessed Joseph through the two boys. "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys." Jacob described God as the one who had shepherded him through the entire movement of his life, from Canaan to Paddan Aram, from Laban to Esau, from Shechem to Bethel, and from grief in Canaan to Joseph in Egypt. Then Jacob asked that his own name and the names of Abraham and Isaac be carried through Ephraim and Manasseh. Let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Joseph saw that Jacob had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it displeased him. He took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's. "Not this way, my father," Joseph said. "This one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." Jacob refused. "I know, my son, I know." He understood which boy stood beneath each hand. Manasseh would also become a people, and he too would be great. But his younger brother would be greater, and Ephraim's descendants would become a multitude of nations. Jacob blessed them that day. Through Ephraim and Manasseh, Israel would pronounce a blessing. "May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." In that blessing, Jacob placed Ephraim before Manasseh. The younger son received precedence, but the older was not stripped of every blessing. Both boys were claimed, both were blessed, both were given a future within Israel. Then Israel spoke to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers." Jacob's death would not end the promise of return. The God who had accompanied Jacob into Egypt would remain with his descendants and bring them back. Jacob also gave Joseph one portion more than his brothers, a portion Jacob described as taken from the Amorites with his sword and bow. Joseph had received more than reconciliation with his father. His two sons now stood among Jacob's sons, each carrying an inheritance. Ephraim had been placed ahead of Manasseh, and Joseph had received a portion beyond his brothers. Jacob had secured Joseph's oath concerning his burial and placed the next generation beneath his crossed hands. But the other sons still carried their own histories into his presence. Reuben's violation, Simeon and Levi's violence, Judah's transformation, and the rivalry that had once sent Joseph into Egypt. Before Jacob died, he would gather all 12 and speak over what each one had become and what would come from them. Jacob called all his sons together. "Gather yourselves," he said, "that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come." Then he called for their attention under both of his names. "Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel your father." He began with Reuben. "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power." Reuben's birth had given him the first position among the sons, but Jacob immediately withdrew the supremacy associated with that place. "Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence." Jacob named the reason. Reuben had gone up to his father's bed and defiled it by sleeping with Bilhah. The offense Israel had heard about near Migdal Eder now entered his pronouncement over Reuben's future. The firstborn possessed dignity and strength by birth, but his action had cost him preeminence. Jacob turned next to Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. The two had acted together after Shechem violated Dinah. They used circumcision as the means of attack, entered the city while its men were in pain, and killed every male. Jacob separated himself from their violence. "Let my soul not come into their council. Let my honor not be joined to their assembly." He accused them of killing men in their anger and injuring animals in their willfulness. "Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel." Jacob did not curse Simeon and Levi themselves. He cursed the anger through which they had acted. Then he announced what would happen to their place within Israel. "I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." The brothers who had united in vengeance would not remain united in a single concentrated inheritance. Then Jacob spoke over Judah. "Judah, your brothers shall praise you." Judah's name had been connected with Leah's praise when he was born. Jacob now joined that praise to the response of Judah's brothers. "Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you." The preeminence removed from Reuben passed into Jacob's words over Judah. Judah had offered himself for Benjamin and spoken for all the brothers before Joseph. Now Jacob described his brothers bowing to him. He compared Judah to a lion. "Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up." Jacob pictured him crouching like a lion and lying down like a lioness, beyond the reach of anyone who would rouse him. Then he spoke of rule continuing through Judah. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples." Jacob's words extended beyond authority among the brothers. A scepter and ruler's staff would remain associated with Judah, and peoples would obey. Images of abundance followed. Judah would bind his young donkey to a vine, and his donkey's colt to a choice vine. Wine would be so plentiful that garments could be washed in it. His eyes would be dark with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Jacob then addressed Zebulun. "Zebulun shall live by the seashore. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be towards Sidon." The future spoken over Zebulun was tied to the sea, vessels, and a boundary reaching towards Sidon. Issachar came next. Issachar is a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. Jacob described Issachar, seeing that rest was good and the land pleasant. He would bend his shoulder to the burden and become a worker under forced labor. Then Jacob spoke to Dan. "Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel." Rachel had named Dan with language of judgment, when Bilhah bore him. Jacob now connected that name with judging his own people, but he also compared Dan to a hidden danger along a road. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper beside the path, that bites the horse's heels so that its rider falls backward. At that point, Jacob turned his words toward God. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Then he addressed Gad with language shaped by Gad's own name. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Attack would come against him, but Gad would answer the attackers. Jacob spoke of Asher through food. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. Naphtali was compared to a doe set free, joined with an image of beauty. Then Jacob reached Joseph. Joseph is a fruitful branch beside a spring. His branches run over the wall. The son Jacob had treated as dead now stood before him with two sons of his own, both adopted into Israel. Jacob described Joseph's fruitfulness as life growing outward from a constant source of water. Then the image changed from growth to attack. The archers bitterly attacked him. They shot at him and harassed him severely, but Joseph's bow remained firm. His arms stayed strong through the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. Jacob named that same divine power as the shepherd and stone of Israel. Then he called upon the God of his father to help Joseph, and upon God Almighty to bless him. The blessing reached upward and downward, blessings of heaven above and blessings of the deep beneath. It included blessings of breasts and womb, the continuing fruitfulness of land and family. Jacob described his own blessings as exceeding the blessings of his fathers and reaching to the bounty of the ancient hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, he said, and on the brow of the one set apart from his brothers. Joseph had been separated from his brothers through their violence, then raised above them in Egypt. Jacob now placed abundant blessing upon his head. Benjamin received the final pronouncement. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the spoil. Rachel's younger son was described through strength, appetite, and victory. These sons stood as the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob blessed them, giving each a blessing suited to him. His words had not treated birth order as the only measure of their future. Reuben was firstborn but lost preeminence. Simeon and Levi were joined in action but destined for division and scattering. Judah received praise, authority, and the ruler's staff. Joseph received fruitfulness and blessing through the God who had sustained him. Each son carried a future shaped through his own name, actions, and place within Israel. Then Jacob gave them a command concerning his body. I am about to be gathered to my people, he said. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite. He identified the place precisely. The cave was in the field at Machpelah, east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan. Abraham had purchased the field from Ephraim the Hittite as a burial property. Abraham and Sarah were buried there. Isaac and Rebekah were buried there. Leah was also buried there. Jacob emphasized that the field and its cave had been purchased from the Hittites. He had already made Joseph swear not to bury him in Egypt. Now he placed the location before all his sons. His body was to be returned to the family's burial property in Canaan. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed. Then he breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Joseph fell upon his father's face. He wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father. The physicians embalmed Israel. The process required 40 days, the full period needed for embalming. The Egyptians mourned Jacob for 70 days. When the period of mourning ended, Joseph addressed Pharaoh's household. If I have found favor in your sight, he said, please speak in Pharaoh's hearing. Joseph repeated the oath Jacob had required from him. My father made me swear, saying, I am about to die, in the burial place that I prepared for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. Joseph asked permission to travel to Canaan, bury his father, and return. Pharaoh granted the request. "Go up and bury your father as he made you swear." Joseph went to bury Jacob. All Pharaoh's servants traveled with him, including the elders of Pharaoh's household and the elders of Egypt. Joseph's entire household went as well. His brothers and Jacob's household joined the procession. Only the young children and the flocks and herds remained in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen accompanied Joseph, forming an immense company. The funeral was not confined to Jacob's descendants. The household of the Egyptian ruler, the country's elders, Joseph's family, and Israel's sons all moved together toward Canaan. When the company reached the threshing floor of Atad beyond the Jordan, they held a great and solemn lamentation. Joseph observed 7 days of mourning for his father there. The inhabitants of Canaan saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad. "This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians," they said. For that reason, the place was called Abel Mizraim, the mourning of Egypt. Then Jacob's sons did exactly as their father had commanded. They carried him into the land of Canaan and brought him to the field at Machpelah, east of Mamre. There, in the burial property Abraham had purchased from Ephraim the Hittite, Jacob's sons buried Israel in the cave. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt. His brothers traveled with him, along with everyone who had accompanied the funeral procession. Together, Jacob's sons left the cave at Machpelah behind and went back toward Egypt.